Good morning, everybody. Good morning. If we could all take our seats. So, welcome everybody to the last Strategy and Resources Scrutiny board meeting of the year. Got quite a lot of people here who probably haven't been before or are not regulars on the board, so welcome. My name is Isaac Wilson. I chair the Scrutiny board. In a moment, I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves, both councillors and officers around the table. But just before we begin, I do just want to mention that we have 3 people in this room who are 3 councillors who are stepping down this year and have done an awful lot for the city, and actually in particular for Scrutiny. I think all 3 of you have would probably say that one of your biggest contributions as councillors has been to Scrutiny, and that's certainly been my observation as well. So I'll just mention each of you in turn, if that's okay. And you're welcome to say something during the meeting as well, or when you introduce yourselves, if you would like to. Councillor Pauline Graham, who has chaired this board essentially and has chaired Scrutiny boards in the past, and I think your reputation is particularly around Scrutiny and as a very strong chair. So I'm sure that everybody is going to really miss you in this room. Thank you. Councillor Cooper, who I've only known as an exec member. I'm not sure if you've sort of chaired Scrutiny and things in the past. You have, yeah. I'm not surprised, but you are a great friend to this board, and I think the numbers and the kind of outcomes speak for themselves. I think you've done a fantastic job as the exec member, and hopefully we've done a fantastic job of scrutinising your department as well. So thank you. And finally, Councillor Blackburn, who always has something to say in these meetings. And I felt that in particular this year, your role on the working group looking at the staff survey results and the action plans was really important. You raised things that others didn't, that actually turned out to be some of the most important things we looked at in that working group. So, I'm not going to embarrass you each by saying how long you've been councillors, but I'm sure that even just cumulatively across those years, across those years, you've obviously contributed a huge amount to the city. So thank you, all 3 of you, and maybe we could just take a moment to give a round of applause to say thanks to those members. Okay, thank you. So I'll get on to the agenda items in a moment, but perhaps we can just start by everybody introducing themselves. So I'm Councillor Isaac Wilson, Wheatwood, and chair of this board. And starting on my left.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pauline Graham, Crossgates and Winmore Ward. And thank you for your words there, which really, thank you. And I've enjoyed Scrutiny as a member and also as chair. Don't remind me how many times and how long ago, but thank you. And I'd just like to say that you've proved to be an excellent chair. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Sharon Hamilton, I represent Moortown and Meanwood Ward, and just good luck to you all in your retirement.
Good morning, Craig Timmins. I'm the councillor for Carvely and Farsley Ward.
Morning, everyone. Echo the words of the chair there. You've all made fantastic contributions, and it's been great working with you all. I'm Tom Hinchcliffe, and I'm the councillor for Bramley and Stanley.
Yes, I just agree as well. Fantastic working with you all. It's been a privilege, and good luck for the future. My name's Andy Parnham, and I'm councillor for Armley Ward.
David Israel, representing the Jewish Staff Network.
Louise Sanderson, I'm the Head of Business Admin for the Council. I'm also co-chair for the Super Families Staff Network.
Good morning, Claire Grundy, Interim Chief Information and Digital Officer. Pleased to meet you all, and I'm covering for IDS this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kat Denver, she, her. I'm the chair of the LGBT Staff Network and a senior project officer.
I'm Quenby Harley, they, them. I'm here on behalf of the LGBT Staff Network.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lindsay Harvey. I'm co-chair of the Healthy Minds Network.
Morning, everybody. I'm David Hornsby. I'm the chair of the Disability and Wellbeing Network.
Good morning, I'm Carol Gentles. I co-chair the Race Equality Staff Network with Dwayne Walker, who was unable to be here today.
Good morning, my name's Lydia Anchin and I'm the chair of the Women's Voice Staff Network. I also co-chair it with Liz Connor, who can't be here today.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm John Yebo. I'm head of HR and Strategy and Resources.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Leahy. I'm HR business partner supporting John within the Workforce CDI team, and I support all the staff networks as well, and my pronouns are he, him.
Well, morning, everyone. Lewis and Carla, head of procurement for the council, here covering the social value report.
Morning, everyone. I'm Victoria Bradshaw. I'm the Assistant Chief Exec for Finance, Trades and Resources and the Section 151 Officer for the Council. Thank you.
Morning, Mariana Pexton, Deputy Chief Executive.
Morning, everybody. Councillor Deborah Cooper, Exec Board Member for Resources and Deputy Leader, Leeds City Council, for the next 38 days. That's the countdown. Can I just thank you, Chair, for your extremely kind comments at the start of the meeting. They're very much appreciated. I have done a number of roles in the council over my 18 years of service, and one of them was as Scrutiny Chair. So, I really appreciate the work of Scrutiny in everything that it does. I think it does the best work when it does it pre-decision as well. So hopefully you will all keep that great work going once I've left and I'm putting my feet up.
Councillor David Blackburn, finally in Wortley. Another one who's only got 38 days, days left. I had the honour of sitting on this board when Pauline was chair, so, many moons ago. I won't say how long ago because I'm not going to show our age. And also, when I was exec member, I appeared as the exec member for a few times at this board. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for comments from the chair and from other members as well. It's appreciated, and I wish you luck, all luck for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Conrad Hartbrook, Rothwell Ward. I'll echo the comments of the chair. It struck me that we're losing a lot of experience from the council, not least so from the three members in this room that are retiring. I'm sure they'll miss the cut and thrust of Leeds City Council politics, but I'm sure they'll be tuning in eagerly to every scrutiny board on YouTube to watch so that they get their politics fix.
Good morning, everybody. Ryan Stevenson from the Harewood Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Billy Flynn from Adeline Wharfdale Ward. Just like to associate myself with Isaac's comments before. And apart from the work that they've done and all the rest of it, I'd like to say that the three councillors who are going this year have been sort of friends across the political divide over a number of years. It's great to see that politics do not interfere with a lot of the work that we actually sort of do, no matter where we come from. And anyway, sorry to see you go, and I'm sure we'll see you in some time in the future. Okay, bye.
Morning, everyone. I'm Rob Clayton. I'm the Scrutiny Advisor to the board.
Thank you. Well, look, in case they miss the live stream in the new year, I move that we send a DVD to all three members of the next scrutiny meeting. No, but in all seriousness, just a very quick reminder: when we're speaking, you've all been very good so far. Please turn your mic off after you finish speaking. And these speakers are great, but they're not perfect. So it's a good idea to sort of move them a little bit closer to you as well when you're speaking. For those of us who've got poor hearing. So I'm just going to start by asking Rob Clayton, our scrutiny advisor, to run through items 1 to 6, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just the standard items we take each time. Item 1 is appeals against refusal of inspection of documents, and there are no such appeals on today's agenda. Item 2, Chair, is exclusions of the press and public, and there are no items that fit into that criteria today. Item 3 is late items, and there are no late items of business today. Item 4 is declarations of interest, and I will just briefly allow any elected members to make any declarations under Leeds City Council's Code of Conduct. I shall take silence as none, Chair. And then item 5 is apologies for today's meeting, and we have apologies from Councillor Lisa Martin. Thank you, Chair.
Could I also just ask you to run through the minutes? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sorry, Chair, yes. Item 6 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of February 2026. And I'll just briefly raise 2 matters arising, Chair, if that's okay. Minute 74 in relation to anchor organisations. Members requested some additional information on that, which was circulated approximately 2 to 3 weeks ago, so members should have that information. And then minute 75 was the staff survey scrutiny statement. That has been shared with the executive member and relevant senior colleagues as to finalise our work on that in the 25-26 municipal year. And then lastly, Chair, it's to approve the minutes as an accurate record. Would you like me to run through them, or?
No. Are members happy with the minutes? Yeah. Can I get a second on that? Yeah. So
That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, and yes, and thanks for the response to our scrutiny report on the staff networks item as well. That was gratefully received, and we wish Councillor Martin well. Sounds like she's a bit ill. So item number 7 is financial health monitoring. I think probably over to Victoria or Councillor Cooper to start on that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the financial health report for month 10 of January. This was presented to Executive Board on the 11th of March. This is showing an improvement on the position that went to February Executive Board, and that the overspend is showing 21.76 million. This is reduced due to some reserves that we've brought into the position, which we will continue to do for the remaining part of the financial year, and some other areas where we've been able to mitigate the overspend, mainly around the underspend on the debt budget. We've brought that in as well now. There are ongoing pressures that were being reported within the financial health report, but it has stabilised over the last few months. However, it is a significant overspend for the council, and therefore we did put in additional controls in place, which will continue to operate in the new financial year. And once we've got assurance that we are managing within the budget that's been set, then they will start to be released, but at the moment we're leaving them in place. Adults had a small favourable change to the position that was reported in February of 400,000, and that was due to increased partner contributions. Children's and families was slightly worse than was being reported in February. However, their number in external residential has been reducing in line with the assumptions in the budget, and they are expected to hit 130 at the end of this month, today. And the news is looking very positive on that. The HRA is obviously a balanced position, and that has been this position right through the year. And we have got an overspend on the dedicated schools grant. The budget did assume that that deficit would be 32.3 million. However, the current forecast is that that will be 26.1 million. Obviously, we've had the announcement from central government about how that deficit will be funded, and it will be predicated on us having a management reduction plan which needs to be in place. We are still waiting to see what will happen for the financial years 26-27 and 27-28. Savings delivery in the year has been achieved. About 65% of those savings have been achieved, and any those that are delayed in the savings achievement have been included within the current financial position. Just quickly on the collection fund, council tax is slightly behind where we were this time last year by 0.5%. However, business rates is slightly better. Those two are very volatile accounts, but we do monitor them robustly on a monthly basis. We are looking around the council tax and what we can do further to increase collection in that area. This report also details on business rates around a relief for pubs and music venues, and this was a 15% grant on relief for those areas. This was in line with the government's announcement, but that wasn't published until the 18th of February, and therefore wasn't in time for full council when we set the budget, and therefore Executive Board approved that relief, which will be fully compensated by central government through Section 31 grants, so there'll be no impact on the bottom line of the revenue budget from granting those reliefs. And those were the main things that I wanted to cover in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure members have all read the report. I will go to questions unless, yeah, that's so. I've got Councillor Blackburn, Councillor Hamilton, and Councillor Timmins. So we'll start with those.
Excuse me. It's regarding collection of council tax, and I was involved in a conversation at the weekend, and several people mentioned to me that the automatic collection, you know, when you do it on the telephone, they had problems actually paying the council tax on that. I wonder, do we know of any problems that's occurring there? Because quite honestly, if it stops people paying the council tax, it affects us in the long run. I've got to say, all the people I talked to managed eventually to get it paid, and it might well have been them not doing it properly. But I just wondered if we knew if there were any problem.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of any problem with the automated collection facility, but it's something that I'll double check. Okay, but it's not been escalated at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry. Mine is regarding the EHCP question. Right. The EHCP requests have increased significantly. What is the current backlog and average waiting time, and how many cases are breaching statutory timescales?
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. The most recent report on EHCPs was taken to Executive Board. I think it was in February. I'd have to check the details outside of this room, but I would also say that I think that would be an issue that Children and Families Scrutiny would, you know, have picked up very extensively. So there may be a report we could check from there as well.
And my next question: what are the implications for service provision and accessibility, particularly in the deprived community, with regards to the centres?
For EHCP?
The Children's Centre.
Children's Centre. Right, okay. Again, Children's Centre Review been the subject of extensive Executive Board reports, and I would say as well Children and Families Scrutiny Board. So and the plans are all predicated to enable access and make sure access is still available, but without necessarily having a centre in every single location.
Any follow-ups on that, Councillor Hamilton?
I won't say it, but I've had a few complaints, but I'll leave it. That's why I asked.
Just a point on those items around children and families. Obviously, as you mentioned in your report as well, it's the area of overspend. But apart from children and family scrutiny, I think the end of year children and families statement will come to this board in June, so that will be a good opportunity as well for members to look at some of those issues. Councillor Timmins.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask some questions around our sufficiency profile. So much of our overspends / failed delivery savings are due to the distance that we are away from the sufficiency profile. However, I will note that children looked after is now below that and significantly lower than at the beginning of the municipal year, which is a testament to the work that the teams are doing in those areas. And I also note that the adult and health overspend has been revised down quite significantly. Given what I've just noted, are we seeing green shoots in terms of our strategy in these areas coming to fruition and our sufficiency predictions? Also, I appreciate that it's not easy, but can you expand on the work that we are doing in terms of delivering a balanced budget to ensure that our sufficiency profiling is more accurate moving forward? And I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, I'll start and others might chip in. Okay, so when we set the sufficiency profile as part of the budget setting, we were probably over-optimistic around what we could achieve, and hence why we brought in Newton to help us to review that sufficiency programme and with what measures we were putting in place. Some of those we have seen come to fruition now, so with the small group living homes, the reunification of children safely back to their families, etc., is really starting to come through. What we have done is, when we were setting the budget for 26-27, is looked at the pressures both in children's and adults and put substantial amount of resources into those to reflect the increased demand that we've seen. However, we are undertaking now the prevention work stream, which is part of the council plan, where we will be working with partners to look at that forecasting and what we can do around those measures to reduce the expenditure in those high demand areas. We're also proposing to bring in a third party to help us look at how we forecast to make sure that that is more robust, and we'll be doing that through the spring and into the summer. We're going out to procure a partner to enable us to do that, just to see if there's anything we were missing. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Got a follow up on that, yeah?
Yeah, just given that we are quite close now to the amount of children that are looked after in the city to what we were this time last year, are you able to give an indication of the cost of delivering that service to look after the children compared to last year, and whether that's increased a lot?
We have looked at the service provision against the different cohorts of children and where those children are currently placed and where they will be placed in the future. And we have put in, I think it's 27 million into children's and families' budgets for next year, taking into account those plans to mitigate some of the overspend that we've experienced this financial year.
Just a quick note, as chair, as a board, I think definitely very interested in forecasting and how it can be improved and stuff. It's good to hear that there's some work being done to look at it specifically. I would be interested to know how is that very much an open look, or is it your view that perhaps we need better data or better systems, or do you not have a view on that yet? And also just how Scrutiny can kind of not necessarily be involved in that in terms of the actual analysis, but I think Scrutiny will definitely be interested in it and would probably appreciate hearing about it and being able to ask about it. Maybe even in the new municipal year having a specific small item looking at forecasting. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so just on the view at the current forecasting, I think it is robust, but it's a very complex area. We're not out of line with other local authorities, but it's what's specific in Leeds that's driving some of that complexity of the provision that we're seeing, or the demand for the provision that we're seeing. And that's why we want to bring in the third party to help us to see if there's anything we're missing or any lessons learned. And we can bring that back to scrutiny once that work's completed. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Chair. You just mentioned a number of the things that we've discussed at the Children and Families Scrutiny Board as well. And it's more of a comment because I'm conscious that neither Director of Children and Families or Adult Health are here. And the comment before, I'm sure it was in good faith about green shoots. Looking at the pure sort of figure work, there's hardly any difference at all between the overspend projected last month and the overspend projected this month. And if you look at the budget variations within each of the directorates, notably in the Children and Families, it's hardly moved. It's reduced slightly, but not by a huge amount. Victoria mentioned demand, and it's quite right. It's a very difficult sort of area to anticipate, to estimate, or whatever. But we're only in a reasonably sort of satisfactory state regarding the end of the year overspend because of the 40-odd million pound that Strategic have actually pumped into the budget this year. So I don't intend to ask any particular questions, specific questions today, other than perhaps to say that the prevention work seems to be very slowly feeding into the amount of money that's being sort of saved, and I just wonder how long it's likely to be before we see a significant improvement in the financial sort of situation. We've seen a reduction in the number of CLAs in external placements of about 10, I think, since this work started. But I'd be more interested in how quickly the work that's being done is going to start feeding through to the budget.
Okay, thank you, Chair. When we're forecasting into once Newton had completed their work, we did put in the assumptions of where we thought the financial position would be, and that has stabilised that position. We've also put in where we think on the budgets that the number of looked after children will be against the different cohorts for the 26-27 budget, and that's why we have put in the extra 27 million in that services budget, directorate budget. We have seen a significant reduction in the number of children in external residential. It was at 157, 158 in the autumn. We're now down to 130. So it is a reduction of 27, 28 children through safely either reunification or bringing the children back into the city, which we're all working hard to do. I think, as Councillor Flynn said, it is a very complex area. And these children that have got safeguarding issues that we're trying to resolve, and therefore it is very difficult around in that forecasting. But I think from where we were to where we are now, I think we're in a lot better place, both from the initiatives that are taking place across the directorate, the work that will be undertaken as part of the prevention work stream across for the whole life of the child and into adulthood will really help with that position. And obviously it's as we go through the year we'll get a better feeling of where things are actually moving to. Thank you.
It will be a comment this time. Yeah, that sounds like a really significant reduction, Victoria. It was down, I think, to 141 at the last Children and Families Scrutiny Board, so it's gone down by almost 100% on the figures saved. So if that's the case, I'm very impressed. But I'm still interested in knowing when it will feed through. Not today, obviously, at future scrutiny boards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, come in on that, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's important to point out that that today we're looking at the financial reporting and not necessarily the service element of the areas that are highlighted within the finance report. They're highlighted because of the overspends that are within those directors, and as Councillor Flynn pointed out, we don't have those particular officers in the room today. So I do want to thank Victoria for answering, as a finance officer, answering some of the matters to do with children's service delivery and how that's impacted the finances. I also think it's important to point out that we're doing a lot of cross-council work in terms of finances, not just for children and families, adults and health, but otherwise in terms of the finances and keeping things in budget and under control. And a lot of that, Councillor Timmins, thanks for some of your comments, because that is starting to show green shoots. So the areas that have got overspends that are highlighted here, but we've also got areas that have kept in budget, that have delivered the services that residents have needed, and continued to work within their budget throughout the year. We're coming towards the end of the year where we will have the outturn report shortly at Executive Board as well, and I'm sure as a Scrutiny Board you might want to look at that when you come back in the next municipal year as to how we performed in terms of what we've said at Scrutiny throughout the year, and then the position that we end up in as well. But I do feel reassured that we are starting to turn a corner, that there are green shoots there, that the numbers are reducing in terms of looked after children, and particularly in terms of looked after children in external placements, which are very expensive and not always the best benefit for those looked after children. If they're from Leeds, should be in Leeds, closer to the families and the communities that they know and feel comfortable in as well. So I just wanted to make those few points, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Cooper. And I guess when we have finance officers as knowledgeable as Victoria, it's hard not to get into the deep. We're very lucky. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. First, just on from asset management's point of view, there is significant pressure on asset management to capitalise some of the sales of assets before the end of the financial year. How's that going? And secondly, on car parking services, it was mentioned to me recently by Wetherby members that the introduction of parking charges in two car parks in Wetherby, one of them, the Riverside, I believe, has generated quite a bit of profit, and the other one, being Station Park car park, hasn't. And I just wonder if each individual asset is assessed on profit and loss, or whether it's just cumulative, and if so, will there be a review of the car parks that are worth it and the ones that aren't, for want of a better phrase?
Thank you, Chair. So just on the asset management, on the sale of assets and the capital receipts, we are monitoring that position at the moment. There is a shortfall on the capital receipts that are being generated this year over what we require to manage the budget, but that will be shown in the financial health report in June to show we are looking at how to mitigate that pressure, but there is a shortfall in capital receipts. On the car parking services, I'm afraid I haven't got the detail to hand on that, and would have to go back and speak to CH&E on where they are with the income generated from the car parking charges.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could please. Have you got a follow-up on that, Councillor Stephen? Okay. Any other members want to speak on this item? No. In which case, if officers or Councillor Cooper have anything they want to finish with on that? No? Thank you very much. That was a good conversation. We covered a few different bits there, and there's definitely some follow-ups for us as a board. Are members happy with a recommendation in a report on this one? Great, thank you. I won't formally recommend what we discussed in terms of follow-up. I just think those can just be picked up very easily. So that's great. So moving on to item number 8, please. We've got Lewis here to talk about the procurement update report with a particular focus on social value and the Leeds Anchors Procurement Group. And do you have slides? Yeah. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, Rob's putting them up. Thank you, Chair. I'll assume that papers have been read, so I'll just cover some of the main points from the report itself. Next slide, please, Rob. So in terms of some of the areas that make up the work in the report, so in terms of social value team, we've had that in place across the council for a few years now. So the report does touch on some of the key areas that have been progressed since I brought the original report back in 2024. One of the areas I wanted to highlight was that we now do have the external facing web page. So that's really helpful not only for bidders to the council but businesses more generally around how to make a meaningful impact in terms of social value across the city. So it covers how we operate but also some of the ways that businesses can take forward social value. So you would expect that that would help them in terms of proposals to the council but also more broadly because it links in with some of the work that we're doing across the city. And then again, we've developed over the past couple of years really good working relationships with our colleagues in employment and skills within digital inclusion and environment. And that's to, I guess, make sure that we're all speaking the same language and we're all maximising the impact in terms of what can be delivered by suppliers, but also what do communities need and what are they asking for as well. In terms of partnerships and collaboration, the report talks about my role as regional chair of the social value group, so that's across Yorkshire and Humber councils. So again, learning from best practice, what can we take as a economic benefit as well, particularly within West Yorkshire. In terms of, I also lead the Core Cities Procurement Network, which is comprised of the Core Cities Councils. So again, sharing best practice, I think that's really helpful in terms of demographics. So we're more like our colleagues from a Core Cities perspective. So is there anything that we can take forward that's been tried and tested elsewhere? In terms of more recently as well, so I'm on a national advisory group in terms of social value, which is led by the LGA. And more recently, we were in conversations with the, at the time, Parliamentary Secretary for the Cabinet Office around advice on policy development in this area. So again, I think that highlights that Leeds is being showcased as a best practice council, and sort of central government's happy to hear from us. And then again, I think I mentioned it last scrutiny, but there was a briefing paper that was done a few months ago around sort of moving forward with place-based social value. So how can we really address community requirements? I met with localities colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and I think I'm scheduled to go in a couple of months' time to talk about how we take that forward. So again, that ultimate goal of how can we directly connect communities' asks and what's really required with supplier commitments as well. The report also talks about the reporting element, so it is on the screen there. Thanks, Rob. Probably a bit small on the screen, but in essence, what you can see in the top right is the demonstrable impact and work that has been done by officers to deliver social value. And again, just at the bottom as well, a couple of years ago when I brought the report to members, there was a comment that there was not as many projects that had delivered social value. So in terms of the number of projects that were there versus the number that were delivered was quite small. As you'll see, that has increased over the past couple of years and we're still on with that as well. And then just in terms of ethical and responsible procurement, again, we do things within the procurement process to get better outcomes. So we seek to, where possible, ensure that staff are paid at least the living real wage on council contracts. We encourage them to adopt best practice employment practices and to make sure that modern slavery, human trafficking is not a part of council contracts as well. In terms of support to lead suppliers, as I mentioned in the report, so over the past 5 years, we have been consistently above 60% in terms of our local and SME spend. What we have found from recent conversations and dialogue is that there still is further work to do in that area, which I know members were interested in the past few times I've come. So the report talks about some of the things that we're doing more broadly around that as well. And then finally, I think there was a paper a couple of months ago around Leeds anchors, and it was just to give my perspective in terms of some of the work that's happening there. So that group's made up of key procurement leads in the city, so we do have the ability to affect change. At the moment, our focus is on local spend. How do we maximise that social value and that consistency across the city? So making sure, again, as I mentioned with some of the website stuff, so yes, the council, we want to affect our contracts, but how can we have a bigger impact in the city? More broadly, sort of the collective score in comparison to some of the other areas isn't as big, but what I guess I would say, and I think my anchor colleagues would echo, is that it is quite a hard area to influence, and that's because we all work in really different ways. We've got different processes, etc. But that's not to say that we can't take some of this work forward, and we are. And that's where on the last bit of that slide where we're talking about sort of some of the work we've done. So the networking events, again, we want to continue that because suppliers in the city found that really useful. Again, we submitted a joint response to the Cabinet Office in terms of some place-based policy consultation that came out last year. We've delivered and developed content on our anchor website in relation to procurement as well. And then finally, at the moment, we're involved in sustainability workshops and how can we reduce Scope 3 emissions within the city. So, quick summary. And then in the report, some of the questions, I'm sure members will have their own questions, but just to prompt the conversation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. That's really useful and admirably concise presentation as well. Appreciate you coming back to the board twice. Good to hear also that you chair Procure City's procurement network. So Leeds is influencing things nationally. That's very positive, I think, and adds more weight to what we do on the Scrutiny board as well. So would members please indicate if they've got any questions? So I've got Councillor Hinchcliffe, Hamilton, Stevenson, Flynn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming back. Just to say that I've seen in Bramley and Stanley an actual visible progress on this. I'd never actually witnessed social value in action. I think it's something that a few members had raised last time. We knew it was happening, but we weren't sure, when we'd see it. But I was at the Governor's Board of West Silk the other week, and they just had a construction session with a company that has a contract with us for kitchens and bathrooms, and they really enjoyed that. So thank you for that. One question on the place-based kind of drive we've got. Obviously, you are working with community committees. I chair the Outer West, so that's welcome. But I think it would be important if we can really work with elected members on a ward-by-ward basis as well, to put you in touch with the relevant community organisations who really know what the communities need. Thanks.
Yeah, no, but I'll respond anyway, Councillor Hinchcliffe. So yeah, absolutely. I think the work that we're doing is to make sure that there is member involvement and to see what is possible. I think just being mindful as well around what suppliers can actually deliver. I know that we are absolutely ambitious and want to do as much as we can through social value. What I would say from experience is we do need to balance that with what can suppliers actually do, and that's where the pre-procurement work is really important. So I do see members and communities having a role within that pre-procurement process as well, so that we're maximising what the communities actually need rather than what suppliers can deliver.
Thank you. So I've got Councillors Hamilton, Stevenson, Flynn and Timmins. So Councillor Hamilton, please.
Thanks, Chair. My question to you, I'm sure I've asked it similar before. How are you ensuring social value contribute to closing inequalities, particularly for cultural diverse communities? And then I've got one more.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. So in terms of the social value bit itself, again, there are sections in there around EDI. So we do ask questions around, as part of this contract, sort of gender, race, disability, etc. So at the moment, that is more reporting based. We do want to take that forward in the new procurement strategy around being able to maximise that. In terms of some of the work that we're doing more broadly in the procurement team, so we're in conversations at the moment with the Yorkshire Asian Business Association around developing a bit of a masterclass, which I guess could be tailored across several minority groups. I'm in conversations with our E&D team here as well at the council. But again, I think so there's kind of two elements to that, Councillor Hamilton. There's the delivery and the contract, but then more broadly, what can we do to support suppliers, minority groups in bidding and making an impact in the city?
Right, my last question. The report referenced support to minority groups. How systematically is equality embedded across all contracts rather than through isolated examples? What requirements are in place to ensure suppliers deliver on workforce diversity, fair employment practice, and progress opportunities?
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. So in terms of the procurement process itself more broadly, so as I mentioned in the first response, we do ask those questions around EDI, just more broadly to give the board assurance as well. So in terms of our procurement processes, equality is a part of that. And in essence, if there are any breaches to equality, aka they're not following the Equality Act, or there's sort of human labour breaches, etc., that contract wouldn't be awarded to a supplier that breaches that. There would be an automatic fail. So in terms of providing that assurance in the procurement process, yes, we do ask that question alongside the questions that we ask in terms of EDI. So what in terms of this contract, what proportion of people are female, what proportion are disabled, etc. As I mentioned in the first response as well, we do want to take that a bit further. So at the moment, we are reporting on it, and we're making sure that it is contractually met via the social value team. So that's part of some of the metrics that were on the dashboard. But again, I think there's probably further work we can do as a team, as a city as well, to link up. I think that's where some of the work has come from, in terms of the Yorkshire Business Alliance, Asian Business Alliance. I think that could be expanded across multiple minority groups as well.
Councillor Stevenson, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at page 74, and I know that not every word written in here is gospel, and it is a report, but I just wanted to flag and ask a question that on paragraph 10, where it says, seek to ensure modern slavery and trafficking is not taking place in our supply chain. As a verb, seek means to try or attempt, whereas I would argue within the law, it's a must. So what does the process look like? What's our due diligence process around modern slavery and human trafficking when we're looking at procurement?
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. So again, yeah, slight typo then. Yeah, we absolutely do that, and I think I covered some of it in terms of Councillor Hamilton's questions as well. So modern slavery is a part of that. We ask suppliers to either provide a copy of their own modern slavery statements or sign up to the declaration with their tender documents that they won't commit such offences as a business itself. And then through the contract management, we do ensure that we ask that question repeatedly to suppliers. In terms of the work that I do for social value across the region as well, we do have a separate work stream within that around how can we better link up as councils to share best practice and share information around where suppliers may be breaching those obligations.
And or both linked and slightly connected to that, in terms of the workforce that have the right to work in the UK, how deep can we go in checking that people working on those contracts have the relevant visas, etc., and rights to work?
What I'll do is I'll double check what it says in our documents, Councillor Stevenson, because I don't have it to hand, but I do think that is a part of it, and we would check sort of if it is required in the contract around that vetting process and what it looks like. But what I'll do is I'll double check what the document says and come back to Scrutiny Board with that information.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Flynn and then Timmins, please.
Thank you. Excellent presentation as usual, Lewis. I don't think anyone has got any doubts about the value, the social and economic value of the local sort of approach. I just wondered if there was any sort of economic downside to the social sort of approach locally. In global's the wrong word, but from purely an economic point of view, does it cost us an awful lot of money to do this, or is there not much difference in the two approaches?
Thanks, Councillor Flynn. What I would say we do in terms of that pre-procurement stage, and I guess this goes for every contract, is look at value in its entirety. So that is made up of different elements, as you're aware. So price would be one, and that is obviously important to us as we're trying to manage our budgets. But there are wider implications or wider things that can be delivered through the contract. So what I would say is where you've got markets that are extremely competitive, so price might not be that necessarily the ultimate factor, where we can deliver better community impact. I think members here and officers would agree that we should seek to get as much as we can. So I don't think there is an economic downside. What I would say to provide assurance to the board that we do scrutinise the criteria before we go out to tender to make sure that it's balanced appropriately, so that we're not paying over the odds as a result of it, but also that we maximise the social value outputs as well. So that's what happens pre-procurement, to get the right blend of weighting before tender.
Just on a similar note, before I get to Councillor Timmins, I know that one of your focuses is making it as easy as possible, essentially, to procure, and I guess like the simplicity of contracts and things is quite important. I can't remember if you measure essentially how people find the experience of applying to tendering for a contract, but I would be interested in that if you do. And do you feel that there's any tension between the drive to improve social value and add those kinds of requirements in, and the experience of procuring from I can't think what the right word is, but you see what I'm trying to say.
Thanks, Chair. What I would say is at the moment, so we don't have a formal mechanism for that supplier feedback. Members may recall when I brought the paper in terms of the upcoming procurement strategy and contract management strategy, that was one of the areas that we did want to focus on in terms of can we get feedback so that we are continuously improving and making it as simple as possible for bidders to apply for council contracts. So the feedback that we've got has been anecdotal, aka some of the feedback that we got at the supplier networking event last year with the anchors around. It's not necessarily something new, we have heard this over multiple years, and that's why we are making efforts to make it as simple as possible to bid. And what I would expect is that when we do launch the new procurement and contract management strategy later this year, subject to coming back to scrutiny again later in the year, but what I would expect, because that will be in place, we're able to get tangible feedback, because at the moment it's verbal, anecdotal through events.
Thank you. I think I would be certainly, as a board member, interested in that sort of supplier feedback and what the experience is like for them. Councillor Timmins, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lewis, again for your presentation. It's always interesting, and you're always all over your department, so thank you for that. So just looking at paragraph 17, scrutiny feedback, so what you're asking from us. So the second point, to what extent are you aware of the current social value benefit in your ward? So just to highlight in my ward, so we've got the Dawson's Corner project going on at the moment, massive project, and I've been really impressed with their engagement with the communities in terms of using local contractors, procuring stuff from local food establishments, or a local garden centre that we have in our ward, donating trees to Farsley Community Orchard. There's a number of things that they're doing, and as well work placements for young people, which has made me feel good about the project, that is causing a bit of disruption in the ward. So I'm really grateful of that. Some of the feedback I've had from some of my other colleagues that represent different areas to me is that with the expansion of the city centre and all the stuff going in the city centre, they don't always see the benefit of that for their neighbourhoods. So what I would like to see going forward is how social value from the city centre has impacted some of our most deprived areas, our priority neighbourhoods. I think it would be really good for us to be able to see that as a scrutiny board, and knowing that actually what we are doing in the centre is affecting other parts of the city in a positive way. And then the second point I want to go on is I'm meeting a group of SMEs within my ward tomorrow. It's the launch event of a group that they've formed to support each other locally. And I'm just wondering what you think is the best advice I can give them in terms of engaging with the council and being able to win contracts and get the council to use their services.
Thanks, Councillor Timmins. I'll answer the last question first. So you can put them in touch with me if that's going to be easiest. We do have a lot of material, and the report talks about some of the stuff we've done. But I recognise that SMEs are extremely busy, and typically the directors, the HR managers, the bid manager. So anything we can do to support Leeds-based businesses will have a net positive effect more broadly. And as I've mentioned to board members before, we're not the only public body in the city. So actually, if we do this work with SMEs, that will have a benefit in terms of applying for other anchor organisation contracts as well. So happy to have a conversation outside of this, Councillor Timmins, if you are meeting with that group. In terms of your point around the expansion of the city centre, I think that is a really important one as well, around how can we affect change. So typically where we do have these place-based contracts, it's really easy to say you should deliver it in that area, but actually there will be opportunities, I think, where we can shift some of that to more deprived neighbourhoods to make sure that we're rebalancing as well. So that's something that we do want to look at more broadly. I might have some figures that I'm able to share in terms of where we've done that, or anecdotes, so happy to bring that as a separate note.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions now? I'll let Mariana come in, and then a question from Councillor Farnham.
Just on that one, Chair, in terms of a read across, I would think that there's an annual report goes to Executive Board about priority neighbourhood wards and the impact. I would suspect that some of the employment and that kind of thing is driven from city centre investment, for example. So it might just be worth us doing a read across and checking that, because that's possibly where the evidence would come from rather than through the process, because obviously we do as much tracking as we can, but we've got to be proportionate in terms of how we track things. So that's worth a read across maybe when you're talking to Liz next. And there's one due at Exec Board in the next couple of months, which will give an updated picture on priority neighbourhoods.
Thank you. I think it's a really good point. I think that proportionality is really important for us to bear in mind. And Councillor Parnham.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Good to see you again. Thanks for all the work you're doing. I've got a question. Quick declaration of interest. I'm actually a learning disability support worker who's employed by a charity that has a contract with Leeds City Council. And at the risk of sounding like Countdown Dictionary Corner, I just want to ask Councillor Stevenson, when he said to seek, it's important. What can we do to ensure that employers like my own actually do pay the real living wage rather than the minimum wage? Because we are delivering a service that what used to be done by Leeds City Council. So you've got hundreds of support workers dedicated, frontline, worked all through COVID on the minimum wage, not the real living wage, right? When it's been put to employers, why not by commissioners, when commissioners have asked, they've just said it's an ambition, which to me seems a bit of a cop-out because it never arrives, and that's some years ago. So how often are these contracts, like the ones to the organisation you work for, how often are they being reviewed? And could we turn an ambition into an expectation when we as a council do offer these contracts to external providers? Is there any way of making an expectation that they are paying the real living wage? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Farnham. So in terms of those specific points you put there, I don't have the information to hand, so I think it's probably one outside of the meeting. And then in terms of whether we can make it an actual mandatory field. I need to take that away and look at it. So at the moment it is an ambition, and we do try to get that in contracts where it is possible. But I need to take that outside of this board, if that's okay, and maybe provide a response.
Thank you. You've got a follow-up question, Councillor Barnes?
Just very briefly, that, you know, ambition is a word which is very vague, isn't it? It's like reasonable. What is reasonable? What is an expectation? So just a bit of like oomph. I think we've got the power to do it as a council, but I just think we need to be a little bit more forceful with some organisations. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Farnham. Like I said, I'll take that outside this meeting, and more broadly, that's the question around contract management. So that should be, those sorts of questions should be coming out in the contract management life as well. So yeah, I'll provide something separate to the board if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions from members on this item? No? Okay. That's been really useful. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for indulging me at the end of that item. I just wanted to say, you know, how grateful I am and thankful I am that we've got Lewis heading this work. I think in terms of our social value, we are streets ahead of anybody else, other councils, other public bodies, despite us having to make savings within that department, I've got to say. They're still delivering for us, and it's really good to hear the questions that Scrutiny have still got for that area of work within the council, and I'm sure that it's going to go, you know, onwards and upwards in terms of the new procurement strategy that's going to come out later in the year. And I wish you luck with bringing that in as well when that comes later in the year. All of the things that you've questioned, I have an understanding that will be delivered within that strategy that's going to come. So I'm sure as a board you'll be really interested in all of that. But you know, even as a council ourselves, in terms of the work we do, if you look, so the Leeds Building Services, the work that they've done, it's mentioned in the report about refurbishing the new baby bank. The work that they did, also the contractors who work with Leeds Building Services did a lot of that work as well, and also some of our own staff did it, you know, in their own time and so on like that. So it's actually about an ethos of how we work. It might not be able to fit into the language that's been talked about here by Councillor Stevenson and Parnham. Don't know how he quite put it, but for me, it's about the ethos of the staff in this organisation wanting to ensure we get the best out of everything that we do in terms of procurement for social value for the people in this city, and I'm really pleased to see that that's come on, you know, in leaps and bounds since I've been here as a councillor, and it's good to leave it in the position that it's in. I know it's going to go from strength to strength, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Well, as I say, this has been a really good item. Thank you, Lewis. And obviously, this board is very interested in procurement. It's a huge part of what we do as a council. So next year, I'm sure you'll be back. And I would say I would be particularly keen to see feedback from suppliers and understanding of supplier experience as well at a future date. Are members happy with the recommendations in the report on this item? I'm seeing nodding heads, so that's a yes. I'm going to suggest that we take a short comfort break before the next item. Thank you so much for everyone from the staff networks. You've been waiting really patiently, but we'll take a short comfort break, just 5 minutes, and then we'll get started on the item number 9. Thank you. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Strategy and Resources Scrutiny Committee meeting. We're on to item number 9, which is sure to be a good one. Thank you, everybody who has come to a meeting and waited for this item. It's definitely a more complicated item, so bear with us because we've got presentations from quite a number of people, and including Rob Clayton, who's our scrutiny advisor, who will duck out from taking minutes to do his presentation, but we're really grateful for that. And just to say what we're going to do is we're going to run through all the presentations and then move into question and answer. We had a pre-briefing, so I think people know the kind of time expectations around presentations. I really appreciate as chair that it's very hard to balance the amount of stuff that you do and what you need to get across and the time we've got, but hopefully a lot of that will come out in the question and answer. And please do bear in mind that members will have read the reports, read through all your brilliant submissions from each of the staff networks, which I must say as chair made for really, really interesting and useful reading. So thank you for all the time you've already put into this item. I think what we're going to do actually is start off with the Ed Whiting as Chief Exec and the HR team, and then move into the individual staff network presentations. So Ed, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the invitation to join today's session. I won't say very much because I'm keen that we get into the substantive presentations and feedback, so I'll hand over to John in a second. But just to frame, I think, the discussion today about why this matters to all of us, certainly on the senior leadership and to me personally, we all spend a lot of time working together on issues around equality, diversity, inclusion in many, many forms. That includes with the staff networks you're hearing from today, also with trade union counterparts. It's a big part of our discussions there, and in lots of other configurations around the city and around the council. So it does matter to us, and we're talking internally about the council today, but it's a big part of what we're all doing. It matters because it's crucial to the quality of the services we deliver, that we are both reflective and we represent the city in terms of the makeup of our organisation. It also matters because it talks about the workplace that we want to be, where everyone working in Leeds City Council, whatever their background, whatever their characteristics, are able to thrive and are able to do the best work of their career here. So it really matters to us. We've been working over the last year on making sure we have an EDI strategy that is clear and that has measurable sort of indicators to show how we're doing, including where, for instance, on representation, which is one part of the picture, not the only part of the picture, but where we have further to go. And I think we're making progress on that. John will talk about that as well. But it's really clear to me as well, and as we've discussed a lot, EDI manifests in the day-to-day experience of our staff and of people around this organisation, the city. So it links closely to workplace culture and will really inform the work we'll do through the year on workplace culture, on how we work with each other, the standards we have. For my own part, I'm privileged to chair the Staff Diversity Forum, so I meet with the magnificent people around the table here, roughly once every 6 weeks, as diary allows, where we have open conversation to just feel our way through how the organisation's working, what's important, what's coming up. We also have been developing the work as CLT sponsors, so each member of the corporate leadership team working closely with an individual network to make sure their concerns, their interests, what's going on is reflected around the leadership table, and also that they have a link point who can really devote time to that relationship. And we've all been spending time on that over the last year or so. What you hear from everyone today, it's all work in progress, and EDI always is. We're really grateful to David and to others for the new networks that have been established over the last year that say still, as John will say, work in progress, but also to be clear that this is about both celebrating where we're making progress as an organisation, but also holding the mirror up and having transparency about where we need to improve. And I'm really grateful to the contribution of the staff networks, as well as, say, alongside others like our trade union counterparts who've helped to bring that up and have real transparency about that. Finally, I'd like to add my personal thanks to staff network chairs around the table. This takes time and takes effort and takes sort of energy, the chairing of a staff network, and it's in addition to busy jobs that you're all having. I'm really personally grateful for the time you've each put into your networks and for the support you're giving each other. both as chairs, but also within each of those networks, because you do make the council what it is, and I'm really grateful to that. So I'll stop there and hand over to John and get cracking.
Thank you, Ed. Chair, I'll be very brief. You've been very clear in terms of this session. So I've got 4 or 5 slides. I will only speak to the EDI action plan, and colleagues will share their lived experience as networks. The plan itself has been shared already as an appendix to the report, so you can clearly look at the detail of the plan. So we're clear. We have a plan in the organisation around workforce equality, diversity and inclusion. Leeds' ambition is about inequality. I know Councillor Pannon will say it's an ambition. What do you mean by that? I think the delivery vehicle for that here is a council plan. So the EDI workforce plan sits very well underneath all of that. So that's what that's been built on over the years. We didn't start the EDI plan a few years ago. We've been working on this for quite some time. And again, I won't count through the last 4 years, but clearly in the presentation, we give you some examples of what we've done, achieved, and worked through over the last 4 years in this space. Rob, next slide, please. So the plan's ready. Iterations of it came to Scrutiny Board for your inputs, and we're very grateful for that. And where that has got us is 3 clear objectives. This has been co-produced with colleagues across the organisation, and what we're saying very clearly is over the next 4 years, between now and 2030, those are our areas of focus: inclusive workplace, anti-discrimination, and representation. And they're clearly defined in the plan as to what we mean by that, who's working on them, and what outcomes will look like at the end of the 4-year period. So what you probably haven't seen and we haven't shared with you is the very detail of what each directorate is doing. So on those 3 key themes, every single directorate has a plan on a page speaking to those 3 themes. So that's where consistency comes across in terms of the organizational plan. Each directorate is responsible for delivering those 3 things with a number of actions underneath those 3 areas. All 5 have a plan page already completed, checked through and signed off by our corporate leadership team and ready for delivery. Next slide, Rob, please. So how do you monitor this? How do we know we're doing what we say we're going to do? Firstly, again, thanks to Scrutiny for the regular check and challenge. I think I come here almost every other meeting now, which is very useful. We welcome your oversight in that process, and we'll keep on doing that, reporting through to you on what we're doing. The corporate leadership team have a clear assurance and oversight role, and there's a new kind of arrangement where we go to CLT to talk through the plans every quarter with CLT, so they get a real kind of overview of what we're trying to do across the organization. Of course, we get a lived experience view anyway from colleagues who are here today who will share with you their take on things. And as Ed has already said, we're working with trade union colleagues. You've heard from the staff survey, and indeed the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian picks up themes across the organization. All of that feeds into a check and challenge on the plan. What I say is clearly the ecosystem of EDI is through the whole organization. So leadership of this agenda is by CLT, and they're here today, as you can see, in the guise of Ed and Mariana. Accountability is for the directors. That's why they have a plan on the page per directorate that they own. Ownership of that, we have an EDI board per directorate who own the delivery of that plan. And lastly, of course, participation is by everybody. This takes all of us to do what we say we're going to do. Next slide, please. So I think this is my final slide. In the report, you find this page trying to pin down how do we actually measure improvements in representation. So what we've done is taken the overall measurement declared data in the organization around those representative characteristics. JNC is our senior level colleagues, head of services and above, and you can see the numbers there in terms of what they look like. We then compare that against the Leeds kind of census information and try and tease out where we think is a meaningful gap then, if you're comparing to the census. So what do we look like as an organization? We've given some iterative figures to work towards in terms of improving those numbers through the next 4 years. and we'll obviously monitor that annually and report back as we progress through that. So I think that's probably my last slide, if I'm right. Yeah, so that's a general overview of the plan, and I'll hand over to Networks to take you through their lived experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So starting with the Disability and Wellbeing Staff Network, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I understand you've seen some really good analysis work on the staff survey responses that led to 38 service-based action plans. But after they were produced, there was also a much less detailed demographic analysis, taking and comparing the responses from the sorts of staff that we represent, disabled staff, LGBT staff, part-time staff, etc., and comparing their responses to the average for the council. And what we found was that for most of those groups, their experience of working for the council was less positive than for the rest of the workforce, particularly for disabled colleagues who came right at the bottom of that ranking. So my ask to this group is to support a more detailed look at those that demographic analysis to determine whether there are any corporate level actions that need to be agreed to mitigate some of those apparent inequalities that are suggested by that high level analysis. The second part of what I want to say is about reasonable adjustments. And we understand that if you're a member of staff in a wheelchair, then most managers would understand that they have a responsibility to help to try and remove barriers from the workplace to try and enable you to work as productively as possible. But if you have a neurodivergent condition, then that's a different matter altogether. So despite some really strong messages in some of the really great training that we've delivered to managers, there still seems to be a lack of awareness that those invisible disabilities are in fact disabilities and still may need the support of managers and the organisation to put in place adjustments to help people be more productive at work. And this also applies to equipment. I myself am blind. In October, I made a request for a tablet to help me be more productive in my work. That was, where are we now? At the end of March, I still don't have that. That's an off-the-shelf piece of equipment that I could buy off Amazon. And it's not that that wasn't supported by management. It's the processes behind that and the tracking. We don't have a robust system for requesting reasonable adjustments or for tracking what happens to those requests. So my request is to support for the introduction of a robust system of dealing with requests for reasonable adjustments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's great. And just so you know, the key asks that people have gotten things, we will definitely return to those in the Q&A as well. That's really useful. So moving on to David from the chairing the Jewish Staff Network.
Thank you, Chair. The 2 points are in the slides, and I appreciate members will have had the chance to read those. It is incredible that we now have this Jewish Staff Network, and I think some thanks goes to our colleagues John, Paul, and others for helping that to happen, and Ed too. And we should celebrate that we held an anti-Semitism week as part of our work recently. What it has revealed, and this is that key ask, what it revealed, having gone to 2 or 3 of the sessions myself, was just how little anti-Semitism is understood and what constitutes anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred, and that even senior managers within the organisation didn't make the link between, for example, money lending and Jews, and didn't understand why that was an issue. And yet we ask those managers on our behalf to be supportive to our staff so that we are an inclusive workplace, etc., etc. So, and this goes across, it's not just anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred. I'm sure all of us would benefit from understanding forms of hatred better. And so I think that mandatory training around, obviously from my seat, anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred, but generally around how hatred is manifested in our society, would be of benefit to us all as individuals, and would specifically support all of us who are managers in helping to support our staff. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to the LGBT plus staff network, please.
Good literal just afternoon to the members of the board. My apologies, I will try not to sound like a racing announcer because I'm Irish and speak fast. But in terms of the ask from the LGBT network, I apologise to the members of Scrutiny who have sat on the board for a number of years, because my report is fundamentally the same report I have generated year after year, because there's been no real substantial or determinate action that we've seen as a network, and that is the feeling of the organisation. This week is tomorrow is Trans Day of Visibility, and the onus of that organisational activity has fallen once again onto the staff network. There has been no other organisational activity, and actually we've had complexity in even advertising that to the organisation. So as per our first point, we've asked for a very specific action-based calendar of activities that are held throughout the year, where the onus is not put on the weight of the staff who are directly impacted by this, but under the sort of guise of action plans on a page, that tangible and substantial action is taken by each directorate, as opposed to the onus of the staff who are always, as David sort of really well articulated, subject to sort of the difficulties and sometimes the complexities of working in the workplace. We understand and acknowledge completely the complexity of being in an apolitical organisation whenever LGBT specifically at the moment is political with a big and small p. And understand that leads to organisational hesitation. However, for the lived experience of the staff who experience this every day and experience curiosity at best and indignation and hatred at the worst from actual lived reports from staff, we know we need to do better, and we know we're not. As many of our other colleagues have sort of mentioned today, there are a number of barriers also in terms of staff engaging the network. Victoria obviously spoke very powerfully about the complexity of our budget position and the work that we're doing. But this has meant that there are less staff with more work to do, which means they have less opportunity to have those sort of spaces of safety and sort of sense of community that really sort of impact people's well-being and keep them in the workplace because they feel like they are seen and represented and treated with dignity. So I would ask Scrutiny that we look at solving more barriers, particularly for those of our staff who are on the front line, who are more likely to be represented in sort of diverse communities, particularly LGBT people. John has obviously presented the statistics in terms of the data that we have. From our perspective, we think that the complexity obviously with data for diverse communities is that there can be overrepresentation in parts of our communities and other parts remain consistently underrepresented, and we know that is specifically complex for trans and non-binary staff, where we haven't been able to capture the reporting for that, and also we're not really able to determine where they are, but they have tended to be in our lowest pay roles in the organisation. So actually, as a sort of diverse organisation that looks to sort of bring the best of the people of Leeds, we'd like to sort of see more of those pathways for people to be able to progress consistently through the organisation. So those are those specific asks from the LGBT network.
Thank you very much for that. But yes, moving on to the Healthy Minds network, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, I can't see that slide, but I do know what's on there. So I'm Lindsay Harvey. I'm co-chair of the Healthy Minds network. Just wanted to mention that I'm co-chair with Helen Saunders, who isn't here today. She's very sad to miss Scrutiny, but she's on her holidays. So she's left the network in my capable hands. You've met Helen before and you know how excited she gets about Scrutiny board. Yeah, apologies. Yeah, so I'm grateful to be here supporting Healthy Minds today, and it's really nice to see everybody. So Healthy Minds as a network are doing really good. We're in a positive place at the moment. Obviously, you've seen the information that we've provided and shared, so I'm not going to repeat that. But I just wanted to say that the network is in a good place at the moment. We continue to get really good engagement from our members, and we're also seeing benefits from our CLT lead support. So really value that in terms of Catherine Whittam, and she's now very much more involved and actively supporting Healthy Minds, which is very much appreciated, and that's going really well. So in terms of our ask of scrutiny, we're here to basically focus on two particular areas. You may see some consistencies in what we're saying in terms of what other people have mentioned as well. So the key thing for us is around making people feel valued and treating people fairly, obviously. And the two key things are around time. So we need the backing of senior managers and counsellors to provide a clear message to all of our staff that it's okay to take reasonable time on a regular basis with manager approval to participate in activities such as Healthy Minds and other networks. So what we frequently see and hear is that people want to be involved. They love coming to Healthy Minds sessions. They really value them. We've received some positive feedback about the genuine impact that the sessions we provide have on our staff, but they don't always have the time or the approval or support from their managers because they're either under pressure with their day job or they're just too busy. So we hear a lot of, we'd really like to come to the session today, but we can't make it. So could you please send us the slides afterwards? But we don't feel that that's benefiting people by missing out. Anyone can sit and read some slides afterwards, but they're not going to get that support in that peer-to-peer environment. So we'd really like to sort of encourage people to be able to get that 1 hour a month, which is sadly not always the case. And point 2 is around the improving attendance policy and how we'd like to see more support around reasonable adjustments. So similar to what David said, we do hear voices of people who have quite complex conditions. So we've had people come and talk to us about their lived experience of serious health conditions, which also often results in people struggling with their mental health as well. So there'll be that dual diagnosis, and those people struggle with the improving attendance policy because they report things like that it feels punitive. We need to recognise it's not a one size fits all. It's all well and good setting targets for people, but they need to be realistic. They need to be achievable. We can't set people up to fail. We need to be more compassionate and have a more holistic approach to our improving attendance policy and procedure, because especially people that have mental health diagnosis as well, they particularly feel vulnerable and feel threatened at times by that policy and procedure. And again, there's some really good examples and there's some managers that are doing fantastic work and we hear good stories as well, but we just want to be able to be more consistent and hear that more across the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I think we have the Carers and Super Families Staff Network.
Hi everyone, my name is Louise Metcalf and I am co-chair of the Super Families Carers Network, and I'm also a working parent carer. My son Joseph is 10 years old and has a genetic condition called Williams syndrome. So the Carers Network is really here to support colleagues who look after someone who depends on them, whether that's a child or an adult. But we've also got examples of a number of sandwich carers across our organisation who are individuals who are caring for both children and adults. Super Families Group is now in its 6th year, so we had a 5th year sort of birthday celebration last year, which was fantastic. And our group really offers that monthly peer support that working parent carers need, including signposting to services and really opportunities to learn from each other and support each other through what is a lifelong and beyond journey as a parent carer. Since our last scrutiny, we've achieved Carers Confident Level 1 as an organisation, which is fantastic, and I want to talk a little bit more about today too. And we've also been really active across key sort of wellbeing milestones for carers throughout the year, so including Carers Week and also Carers Rights Day as well. So in terms of support for us then going forward, we are operating really without a chair for the adults carers group. So it's really limiting, I guess, our response to adult carers across the organisation as well. So we really need some more support. I mean, we have already been liaising with HR and adults colleagues, but we really need some more support with identifying and resourcing an adult chair to work across the whole carers agenda, but alongside Super Families, which is a more established group. We also want to take the opportunity this June, particularly during Carers Week, to really promote what it means to work for a carers confident organisation. And I think that's a great opportunity for us to raise awareness with staff, but also line managers as well, on what that means. So what staff can expect from working for a carers confident employer. Also, we've talked about reasonable adjustments already as well. You'll all be aware, and EHCPs has been mentioned today already, you know, families navigating SEND systems at the moment is really complex. It's not just happening in Leeds, obviously it's happening across the country. But the Super Families Group, I feel, is in quite a unique position because a lot of our staff are really relying on the services of their employer, basically. And I think sometimes that can leave colleagues feeling quite conflicted, often, you know, where services are changing or they're not available anymore. And as a result, members may sometimes find themselves choosing not to escalate issues that impact on their family because they really get the big picture across the organisation as well. So obviously the SEND agenda is clearly outside of the scope of our network. However, I think it's important to acknowledge the impact that it does have on our staff as well, particularly where children are out of education or they're experiencing long waiting lists for support. So we want to ask the organisation and Scrutiny to continue to advocate for reasonable adjustments for working parent carers across the organisation to help with balancing caring responsibilities. Being mentioned already about staff survey results. There's been a couple of major surveys done in the last couple of years. I want to focus specifically on the disabled staff carers mental health and wellbeing survey, which was done in 24-25. Obviously that gathered some really rich information from the organisation in terms of how staff are feeling. I think it's important to mention that overall carers felt fairly well supported as a result of that survey. However, what would be really great to see is sort of a coordinated response from the organisation in terms of what carers and disabled staff are asking for in terms of support. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. On to the Women's Voice Network, please.
Hi, so I'm Lydia Anchin, I'm co-chair of the Women's Voice Staff Network. So I'll start off saying a little bit about the network and then I'll pass on to Liz, who's my co-chair. So in terms of us, the network, we've had a really productive and positive year. So when we came to Scrutiny last year, I think we were a year into relaunching the network. So this last year, we've really focused on accelerating on some of our network priorities, which are contained within the report. So things around women's health and wellbeing, career progression, sex and misogyny, and benchmarking Leeds City Council in terms of its gender equality. So in terms of our specific asks from Scrutiny today, it's really about helping us build on what's already working well. So one of the things we're looking at is the gender equality and benchmarking. So I think originally we were looking at entering the Times top 50 for gender equality, but on reflection, looking at that that particular self-assessment, we felt that it wasn't really comparing like for like in terms of the types of companies that enter into that, in terms of local authorities that really heavy feature in that. So we've reflected and thinking of looking at how we can best learn in terms of sharing on what works well. So looking at other local authorities perhaps in this area and the work they're doing with the women's staff networks, and perhaps linking in more with them to learn in terms of what works well, and we can build that into our network. So we've spoken to John about it in terms of our regular catch-ups, and we're working with the HR team in terms of doing some of that. Another area was around the women's health and wellbeing. So when we reflect on what are the key things that come up to us as a network, it's really around menopause. That's probably the key issue that comes to our network in terms of menopause, reasonable adjustments and support for women going through menopause symptoms. I think the key ask around that is there's just inconsistency in terms of how reasonable adjustments are applied across the organisation. So I think some women have really supportive managers and they get great support in terms of that, but other women don't, and we tend to find that the ones that don't end up going down the grievance procedure route when what they're looking for is support, not a grievance procedure outcome, and too often it's not a positive outcome in terms of that, in terms of support for them women. So it's just support around making sure there's more consistency and support for women going through the menopause. And then I'll pass on to Liz to talk about our other two asks. Thank you. Thanks, Lydia. So yeah, I'm Liz. I'm a co-chair with Lydia for the Women's Voice Staff Network. So I was going to talk a bit about male allies. Our male allies have been working really hard to refresh their commitments to our network priorities, and they've really been able to achieve some growth across the representation of that group. And we're sort of saying that greater visibility of allyship would amplify the work that's already taken place, especially if members and all of our leadership teams model allyship and actively support change. And it kind of highlights that gender equality is a shared responsibility. So I think we'd just like to build on the success we've already had with our male ally colleagues and take that a bit further. But if everyone can just model those behaviours, then I think it would just amplify things for us across the organisation. And also the success we've had with our leadership succession planning. So in the Women's Voice Staff Network, we've got a really clear and strong succession plan. So we recognise that the role offers a really unique opportunity to build leadership and relationship management skills, as well as confidence and some strategic thinking. And this is all done in a highly supported environment. So we all support each other to achieve some of those skills that people build in the network. So following the appointment of our new co-chair, which is me, we've had some interest in the new vice chair role that we have vacant at the moment. So we were asking Scrutiny to consider how we can be more consistent about allocating space for people to step into these roles. And that's not as simple as just allocation of time. It's more about supporting an environment that encourages and facilitates people to access these opportunities, because these are really good leadership and development opportunities for people. We want to make sure that all colleagues have access to progression opportunities like chairing networks, and not just where people feel that they've got the time allocated. So really, to close, we want to welcome Scrutiny to celebrate with us on the successes we've had so far, and then perhaps just join us on a really exciting future journey that we've got planned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Race Equality Staff Network up next, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. This is my fourth visit to Scrutiny, and I don't think I'm going to say anything vastly different than what I have done in previous years. So on a positive note, I want to say that Leeds is an amazing city, and a quarter of the city is ethnically diverse. However, that is not reflected currently in the workforce. So we have an underrepresentation, which is exacerbated at more senior grades. Now, this does matter, because as public servants, we want to serve our communities well, and we don't believe that we can do that unless we're truly reflective of those communities. So there's no doubt about it, at CLT level, Ed, we're in a privileged position to be able to meet every 6 weeks with Ed, to meet with Andy Dodman and other members of CLT. But we have to reflect the lived experience of our membership. And for a lot of people, they don't even work in the city centre, never mind come to Civic House. And the reality of what's going on in their workplace is not good a lot of the time. They don't feel valued, and the workplace culture isn't very good. We know of staff that have been racially abused, and we have highlighted this to the organisation. But unfortunately, the response in terms of problem solving has taken a long time. So one of the things that we'd like from Scrutiny is some consideration of timescales, because a lot of the time staff will go to grievance, and I don't think that grievance, and we said this actually the first time we came to Scrutiny, we don't actually think that grievances is the right place to resolve some of the experiences ethnically diverse staff are having. But even when they do take out grievances, they take many months to resolve, sometimes running into years. So we would like some commitments to timescales. We've said this before, so it's not new. Other network leads have mentioned managers and leaders, and we believe, and we said this actually in our first Scrutiny visit, that there's an awful lot of work for us to do with middle managers, because again, senior leaders, CLT level, we know the commitment to EDI is there. However, I don't think that our managers and leaders always understand their roles and responsibility in being anti-racist, anti-discriminatory. So we'd really like to see some work done with, or some more work done with middle managers. I think as well, when we've spoken to our members about progression is something across the board that a lot of people are concerned about. But we asked our members, what is the single thing that would make a difference to you in terms of speaking to an organisation that's truly inclusive and anti-discriminatory? And they said representation, without a doubt, especially at senior level. So when we think that some directorates have only 6% ethnically diverse JNC staff, we don't think that's good enough as a network. But again, I want to acknowledge, you know, being here and being able to speak about the experiences of ethnically diverse staff, that is a privilege. But I have to do justice and actually speak about the things that are not going right. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. On to our last one, which is the Career Advancement Network, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just for clarity, I know you mentioned earlier, this is me not speaking in my scrutiny advisor role, but as in fact a network chair. Loads of colleagues have raised some really good points there. I mean, the network that I chair doesn't have a defined protected characteristic as such, so it is a slightly different type of network, but nonetheless, it is focused on ensuring that colleagues can get the most from their work at the council. Obviously, the staff survey, the most recent version of it, picked out progression as a key area of concern for all colleagues. And I think the regular monthly meetings or 6 weekly meetings that we have do highlight that it's actually more of an issue for colleagues with protected characteristics. I think the membership of my regular sessions does reflect that. So I know that the board has looked obviously at the staff survey findings, and I think that one of the asks would be from the network that continues and that interest in that continues. Feedback from the sessions that we hold is also linked to the second point there, which is on consistency of how things have applied. I know there's been loads of really positive developments on like diverse panels, the sharing of questions in advance of interviews, etc. So there's really positive measures, but I think one of the things is that they're not always consistently applied. So when scrutiny does look at, I know there's a keen interest in HR and recruitment, obviously in my role, I know that. I think that consistent application of the new approaches is done consistently. So yeah, across the piece. So yes, I think I'll leave it there, Chair. But yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. So I think that's for last from the staff networks. Just before we move into members' questions, just a couple of things I'd like to just add as chair. First of all, I mean, hugely appreciate all of the work that you've all put in to this session, as well as what you do chairing staff networks. And I think someone used the phrase, lived experience. I think this session already has shown how important it is for scrutiny to hear from you. And I was worried about how much time you'd have to get your points across, but actually I think the points were made very, very strongly and forcefully. And I feel very motivated for scrutiny to have a role working with you on them. And on that note, really, you were kind enough to invite me as chair to your one of your staff networks chairs meetings. And what I would like to see is that next year's chair returns to one of those. And in particular, you've put a lot of thought and work into creating these asks, that the chair comes back with to talk through with you what the outcome of those has been. And I will be as suggesting later on in the meeting that we add to the recommendations that we get a clear kind of report back on those asks from the HR team and from the council around feasibility of meeting each of those and what is being done and what can be done. So as well as the recommendation that we note the themes, I think it's important that you've created some very neat and useful asks that we see what we can do on each of those. So that's something that I'll be suggesting later as chair. And thank you once again for what you've put into this meeting. So I will move on to members' questions. I've got Councillor Hinchcliffe, Stevenson, Hamilton, Blackburn, Hartbrook. I'm not going to remember those. Starting with Councillor Hinchcliffe, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you everyone for your presentations. I've been on this board now for 3 years, and it's nice to see the room gradually filling up with more people as well. I think you made very clear, and the asks were very clear, so I appreciate that. This isn't a nice to have. Not only is it, it's fairer, it's morally right, but it actually makes colleagues safer and more productive at work. So thank you for that. It's really important to lay that down. I don't specifically need answers, really. I'm just going to put a few comments down, but if you do want to come back, please do. Particularly pleased that the Jewish Staff Network are here with David. I think I've worked with the Jewish community for some time with another hat on, and yeah, it's extremely clear anti-Semitism is increasing. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Week was a success, but education has to continue. It is shocking how many people across the city and across the country don't understand what constitutes anti-Semitism and Jewish hatred. So thank you for raising this. It is highlighted in your papers that declaration's an issue as well. So it'd be good to kind of put councillors and elected members forward to really support you on that. And I'd definitely be more than happy to do that. And it is, the political landscape doesn't lend itself to declaring that you are Jewish, and that's a really sad indictment of where we are at the moment. But having a staff network here is really important, so thank you. Really pleased to see the veterans included, Armed Forces veterans. I lead on the covenant for the council, and again, it's a really low number. I think it's 32. We've definitely got more than that. Again, it's an issue with declaration. Some veterans don't understand that they are veterans if they were reservists, and some don't want to come forward, again, because of the political landscape. So it'd be good to do some more work on that, and we are doing it at our covenant board. Finally, on inconsistencies. So several groups, networks raised inconsistencies. I think on the menopause in particular and his hidden disabilities, it came out very clearly that, reasonable adjustments aren't being made as readily as we would like. And I have actually asked for the grievance data following the staff survey, and that's coming to a future board. So it's going to be interesting to dig into those figures and see how we can look at grievances and how many of them have arisen from a lack of reasonable adjustment and how they are impacting certain members of staff with certain protected characteristics. But thank you all, and don't feel the need to come back, but I just thought I'd put those 3 things down. Thanks.
Would anyone like to come back on any of those? Councillor Stevenson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 unrelated points. The first is raised a technical question. I'm looking at page 82 on which shows the progress measure that was in the presentation as well. So it suggests that in terms of where we are now, women in the workforce represent 61%, and the suggestion is that we maintain that figure. And men in the workforce is 39%, with the suggestion that we need to increase it by 10%. Obviously, achieving the latter means you can't achieve the former. So can somebody just explain the impact? I guess that because you can't put in a report that what you really want to do is decrease the number of women in the workforce by 10%. But how do we deal with that in practice? And to Kat's point earlier around, forgive me, Kat, if I interpreted this correctly, but non-binary colleagues feel not recognised. How does that fit when we look at stats like this?
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I think those arrows are indicative of a direction of travel. I think clearly where we're fairly balanced in terms of women, we want to keep that going. We're not necessarily suggesting that we increase men by 10%, but that's the direction of travel in terms of the numbers against the census. So I take your point. Obviously, written down face value, you would say we're going to increase the population by 10%. We're just indicating direction of travel in terms of the arrows. I think the 2 that kind of stand out really clearly, I guess, for me, are the disability data, the ethnically diverse data, those are probably the ones where we'll kind of focus more in terms of making a difference on the numbers. But that's the other way, just indicating that short travel. But I take your point about if you read the looks like we're going to increase it by 10%.
We got an indication from Caps. Yeah.
Yeah, just to that sort of point about sort of the capturing of non-binary and trans data is historically so. There's been a significant, a huge, and very welcome piece of work done in terms of the new payroll system and in terms of staff capturing. Historically, too, that there wasn't really a way to confidently capture sort of trans and non-binary staff. That ability is there now, but what we need to do is really well publicise that, and also to increase the confidence of people in the organisation. Like David said about the confidence in disclosure rate, that absolutely is echoed very strongly within the sort of trans and non-binary community, and particularly in the workforce. So we are hoping we'll see that, so we're able to have some more impactful data, because at the previous scrutiny board and the one before, we weren't able to capture that, but hopefully in previous ones we'll be able to show that a bit more clearly. But at the minute it's still a bit of an unknown quantity.
Thank you. And my second point, which is rather awkwardly, but came from a resident of mine, so I was sort of duty bound to do what was asked of me. But I received the email, which I'll just share with you confidentially, anonymously, which was Councillor Stevenson. I live in your area, I work in the council, and I am Jewish. Last week, staff memos went out offering staff as safe spaces because Nigel Farage, an elected MP, was due to visit Leeds. Yet when the band Bob Villan, who are regularly accused of anti-Semitism, performed in Leeds, there was no memo or thought for Jewish staff members. The email goes on to say, not a single person from HR asked how I was. Once again, it's the case that Jews don't matter in Leeds. Please can you raise anonymously on my behalf? The point I would like to ask, the 2 points coming out of that, would be from a procedure point of view, without putting anybody on the spot as such, but what is the procedure that comes before a staff memo? Who is consulted? At what level of seniority is it signed off? And linked to that, I suspect from reading the report, at the time of the Bob Villan event, the Jewish Staff Network probably wasn't in place. But what consultation would occur in future with all staff networks when events that can be seen as being controversial to some colleagues within the council are taking place?
Chair, if I come back on that. So, Councillor, I think it's fair to reflect there's a dynamic conversation that happens between both organisations around the city and between staff groups about how staff are feeling and how best to support what's happening both in the city and around the organisation. We have continuing welfare support that's available for staff who are feeling upset and unhappy, and it is there regardless of the cause. And so at any stage, I would say to any member of staff, if they feel they need welfare support, we have welfare support on offer as an organisation. So just to point that for those general points, it is a sort of a dynamic conversation. That's partly why I have personally have the 6 weekly conversation around the staff networks to understand what's going on, what's driving your experience of working in Leeds City Council, and the feedback I get from that is incredibly useful. I'm not going to comment on any individual sort of emails, memos, anything. We have an approach where we want to make sure, say, staff have access to reasonable welfare support at any stage, whatever the cause. And we also have a dynamic conversation about what's happening and within the bounds of the procedures and policies we have. We discuss and we figure out what is happening, what's the experience, and how do we best respond to that as a council. So I know it sort of feels like in generalities, but it really is a matter of how we take account of that in our day-to-day work as council and for us as a leadership to best understand the lived experience of our staff and ensure we're supporting that. So I know that may not fully answer the question you've asked, but that's how it is working day to day from my perspective, and it's a continuing conversation to understand with all networks what is the lived experience and how do we best provide that support. Mary, do you want to add to that?
Just to add to what Ed said, Councillor Stevenson, in terms of the event, the question around an event, I mean, I don't think either of the events you mentioned were Leeds City Council events. Now, if there was an event, it might be that we would engage the appropriate staff network, but unless we're the event organiser, the staff networks wouldn't be involved, because that would be for the event organizer to do, and it would be through the, you know, safety advisory group arrangements, etc. But it wouldn't be appropriate for staff networks, I don't think, on either of the two that you've mentioned, just for completing the answers.
Follow-up. Do you have a follow-up question on that one?
No, other than just to Marianne's point, I think just a bit of reflection on the email I'd sent around the disparity, because you're correct that neither of them were council-run events, but the practical effect of what happened was different in both instances, which is what my constituent was raising. So it doesn't need a response, but perhaps some reflection in time around where the staff networks are utilised could be useful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, where am I? No, here we go. Councillor Hartbrook, next up, please.
Thank you, Chair. And in part, building on Councillor Ryan's comments, I mean, I think it's really good to hear the different groups and different staff networks and the work they do in supporting and encouraging sort of us having a fair, equal, diverse city. There's a few comments that have kind of come out from the various representatives that have surprised me. You know, the fact that it takes, well, 6 months and counting to get reasonable adaptations in place for a disability, I must say I'm absolutely shocked by. I just think it's ridiculous. And I also picked up, and it's probably not the space to explore it in here, but I picked up that there are staff who feel inconsistencies between managers in terms of how things are applied. And again, that really shouldn't be tolerated in a council or in any work environment, let alone a council, but especially in a public body such as ours. So I'm kind of curious as to how we give staff the voice, because you know it's not something you can fix from top down as well as just fixing from bottom up at the same time. You have to kind of work from both ends to make these things work. And I think that making sure that staff have, I'll call it whistleblowing, but basically an escalation route for where they feel as though they're not empowered, whether it be for, you know, not getting correct menopausal support or gender or, you know, any of the many other issues, race, any of the many other issues. So yeah, I think I'm surprised from the thing that I've picked up that there's still quite a lot of work for us to do as a council. One slightly more topical, because you know, we do live in a society which is seeing more and more division and hatred and groups, in some cases, many cases, almost being pitted against each other. But one of the reports, which was the Jewish Staff Network report, talks about hatred and unsafety. And I see on social media, Leeds often singled out alongside London as being an epicenter for anti-Semitism. I don't know why, but I just wonder from the representative, A, whether that feels like does Leeds feel an outlier in that? And B, if so, what should we do about it as a council?
Thank you, Councillor. It's a big question. We do have a lot of colleagues and members of the community generally who feel uncomfortable coming into town at times, particularly when there are large demonstrations and protests, which regularly veer into anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred, and where there isn't always the ability for the police to intervene as rapidly as we would feel is appropriate. There was a very outstanding case of this not so long back in August, where a protester was calling for armed resistance and mentioning that armed resistance is a legitimate way of protesting, and then referencing the 4 synagogues and the Jewish school, which my daughter goes to, as within the city. She didn't say one equals the other, but it isn't a large leap to get from there. And when that is going on in the city, that is a challenge, and you're seeing that too, obviously, on the streets of London. It does occur in a number of other cities across the UK. supermarket shelves having Israeli products taken off their shelves, and other acts of small and larger of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred. I don't have the solution, but that I am able to, as Carol suggested, the fact that we are able to bring this forward to you, that we have an attentive audience, and that we have people who want to make this change, and that includes close work with the police too. At least we are trying and not doing nothing. It only takes a few good people to do nothing to let bad people come forward.
I'm just going to bring in Mariana on your first question.
Yeah, if I can just mention that thanks, David, because you gave a much better answer on that one than I would have been able to. Just Councillor Hartbrook, on the reasonable adjustments, I mean, I'm very happy to take that away because I wasn't aware of that example, and I saw Claire was writing, and I think it is probably about the process. We made a lot of improvements a few years ago, and then I wonder whether, I don't know whether any, kind of impact of savings or that kind of thing. So I'm very happy that we take a look at the reasonable adjustments. To your point on inconsistency, we've talked quite a lot at this board about the Be Your Best programme and the fact that we do have 2,100 managers in the organisation, and those 2,100 managers are leading a lot of different services in a lot of different contexts. So what we want as much consistency as possible in terms of how people, align with the values, how people use our processes and procedures. But there will sometimes be differences because the work that people are doing is completely different. Now, what we don't want that to do is adversely affect any colleagues who have a protected characteristic. So we constantly want to drive more towards consistency, and we've done a lot with the Be Your Best programme, and especially we did a lot with the EDI training, which hopefully has made improvements, but as we know from the lived experience, it's not got us there where we all want to be, as Ed said in his opening. So again, we'll take that away in terms of the consistency point as we kind of constantly drive towards that. And then the other thing that hasn't been mentioned today, but we have normally had Vanessa here as our Freedom to Speak Up guardian. So that is another route. And obviously Vanessa liaises a lot with staff network group chairs and trade unions. And we did say last year, I think we would make sure that report went through to corporate governance and audit. And because obviously it's not just about EDI, it's also about service delivery. And so that's just another piece of, for kind of completeness, just to mention.
Any follow-up questions?
No, thanks for clarifying there, Marianne. I mean, I think it's, I fully sympathise that we have a lot of managers in our organisation, and EDI is one of the many things they have to juggle. And even looking at the selection of individual characteristics and groupings that sit around this table, it's clear there's a lot for them to juggle. I guess what I'd like to see is at least it to be clear to individuals so they can self-advocate what they can reasonably ask for from our organisation, because it sounds as though potentially that the right to ask, to say this is what fair looks like for me, and actually allies and advocates should also be able to say this isn't fair for you, but actually as a backstop, individuals should be able to identify whether they're getting treated equally or not and have a right to ask for it.
Sorry if my answer came across complacent. It definitely wasn't intended to be at all. We're absolutely, completely committed, and we'll keep doing everything that we can through all levels and all routes.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hamilton, then Blackburn, Timmins and Parnham.
Thanks, Chair. My question, first of all, I was going to ask a question on Dawn, but I might miss that. And I've also got questions on the women. But before, I'll start with the Race Equality Staff Network. This is an important voice across the organisation. However, the issue raised in this paper are not new, and the data is telling us something very clearly. So my question is, representation of ethical diverse staff sits at 18% versus 26% of the city population. What is the organisation's time-bound plan to close this gap, and by when will parity be achieved? Then I got 2 more questions.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. I think we've shared with you in the past the work we're doing around certainly promoting representation in the organisation. We've talked about the Aspiring Leaders Programme, and the current cohort of that is at least more than half ethnically diverse in terms of colleagues going through that programme. Working with colleagues in recruitment around being more targeted when we do recruit, when we're able to recruit. Clearly, you're aware of the situation around our financial challenge. So we're doing some work from the grassroots right through to where people are already in the organisation, how we can improve that data. It would take time, and this is a long-standing challenge for us. But I think the bit around inclusive workplace is connected to that. The more work we do around treating people fairly, that cuts across to everybody, not just race. And the more of that we do, and that's set out in the plan very clearly what we're doing around inclusive workplace and what we mean by that, and what our charge is to our managers who are kind of our kind of front-facing leadership team dealing with people every day. All of that speaks to representation, and we've said the data there very clearly. We've been very brave to do that. We didn't have to do that, but we want to very clearly measure where we sit right now as an organisation against what the city looks like, so we can have something to work towards on a yearly basis. And we set out at the back of that plan, you will see those measures in terms of what we do every year, and annually we will obviously appraise that and come back to you, and you will see how we're progressing along representation.
My second question is, they've also raised the cases. So they've also identified cases lasting over 2+ years. Why is the organisation allowing cases to drift to this extent, and what immediate action is to be taken to resolve them with regards to disciplinary and...
So we are aware of quite a few people that have approached the network. Very often racism in the workplace manifests itself not as name calling, but as bullying, capability or involvement in formal processes. And we've been long-time advocates of early resolution. We feel that anytime a problem arises in the workplace, regardless of race, we should be working to resolve it as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, it's not the case for many of our members. We do know of one person whose case has been going for 2 years, and someone else who has become dissatisfied for over a 4-year period, because very often what happens is once people say they're not happy, take out a grievance, it just takes too long to resolve. But I would question the grievance process as being, is it the right place in the first instance? But it's where people are going to, because I think very often they don't know where else to take their concerns. So I feel that there is some work that we need to do with managers around problem solving, about conflict resolution. I think that some people feel that there's a group of people that do EDI or do inclusion, but actually it's all of us. So yeah, that's where we sort of want to be as an organisation. We're highlighting this as cases of malpractice. There may be good practice that we're not aware of, but whilst it exists, we have to sort of talk about it as a concern.
Got Ed as well, just coming in on that.
Yeah, just wanted to be clear. Thank you for the question, Councillor Hamilton and Carol. You don't need to speak for the whole organisation, but thank you for, and you've been such a leader in bringing concerns to the table, which is you've done brilliantly. So thank you for that. Just to confirm that what Carol said, it is in all of our interests that we're able to support early resolution wherever possible, and if issues do go to a grievance, that we're able to work that through promptly. We are really keen to make some progress on that, partly because it doesn't help anyone to be for issues to be dragged out longer than they need to be, and grievances where they do need to be followed should offer as swift a resolution as possible. Councillor Hamilton, you were part of the discussion where we're trying to make some progress on that and looking at how we can reflect and sort of increase our progress on that. And I know, John, you've been thinking about that too from the point of view of grievances. It is something that I hope we can come back to and talk about as we go. There will probably always be some grievances in the organisation. That's part of any organisation, particularly one of this size. But for me, a culture of early resolution, wherever that's possible, should be what we're driving at. And I hope that we can accelerate the work on that.
Well, my third and final question is coming back to the timescale, governance and process integrity. So my ask, will the organisation commit to mandatory timescale for grievance and disciplinary processes, for example, 90 to 120 days, with escalation route where these are where there are breaches? Because I've read it and I'm hearing 2 years plus, so.
Again, thank you, Councillor Hamilton. As you're aware, we sat around the table with about 15 colleagues, including yourself and union colleagues, and to look at these issues. Colleague of mine, the head of directory support, is bringing forward a very clear case management plan that picks up all those points. It will pick up around timelessness. It will pick up around prioritizing cases. We now have the data. Now with the new system, we have the data to properly planned cases coming through, so we can focus on the longest lasting cases first. So that case management plan is coming forward from Kate, as you know, alongside all the various points we covered at the roundtable. I thought it was a very useful meeting, actually, getting together all of us roundtable to say, what can we all do collectively to move this on? As Ed says, there will always be agreements in the organisation. Obviously, one single grievance is one grievance too many. But colleagues have the right actually to raise those matters, and they should continue to do so. Your point is, when they do that, do we move quickly enough? And we're doing that. The early resolution approach is coming forward, and that's a group of its multidisciplinary team looking at issues really quickly, and that involves the unions, involves HR, involves the freedom to speak of Guardian, involves colleagues in children and families who have an expertise around early resolution in terms of solving matters quickly. And that group is going to do much more work around how do we get in earlier and quicker. So I think what we do is set out all the views from today, collect all of that, and look at the plan that we put behind that, and keep on bringing by that in terms of tracking progress.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for that. So I'm not getting any commitment regarding the 90 days to 120 today.
I'm just going to bring in Mariana on this as well.
Clearly, it wouldn't be right for us to commit to that kind of a timescale in a meeting without considering the implications, but I'm happy to take that point away as part of the work that we're doing on the grievance practice review that we've talked about with Scrutiny before, and working through the pilot, what that would mean in practice and whether or not it's achievable. The grievance practice review, the work that was done by John a couple of years ago, it has taken us longer than we wanted to implement it. We've been very honest about that. There have been some capacity issues, but we are, progressing it with the pilots now, and we'll take forward your suggestion, Councillor Hamilton, in terms of the timescales as a part of that to see whether it's achievable or not and what the implications would be.
So any timescale as when that will be coming back or concluded?
It would make sense for that to be aligned with the pilot, which I think is in hand at the moment. So when we report back on that pilot, which I'm not sure, is probably due early in the next municipal year.
Thank you. Okay, we have got councillors Blackburn, Timmins and Parnham.
It's not a question, it's more comment, but for many years I sat on to Member Officer Equalities Working Group, and I know progress has been made over years, but certainly from what's in the statements that people have made from the group, there's still a hell of a long way to go, and we need to do something about it. On the issues to do with disability and equipment, 20 years ago, I was involved in a similar case to what you're talking about, and quite honestly, from my viewpoint, I thought we'd solved this, where basically we decided it was us that was actually disabling the people, not the people being disabled, because we weren't giving them proper equipment to do. And when we set the call centre up, we specifically did things there that helped disabled people to work in that environment. And I remember personally being involved in a project for blind people, or I'll say partially sighted people, where we got computers where it gave a really big print so they could see, and big letters on your keyboard. I'm just disappointed to say it, and I've got to say, I don't think it's coming from top, because I know we're working over years with leadership at council. They have the same attitude to it as I have, that it's, but we shouldn't be disabling people. But I'm really disappointed to find out that situation's happening, and I hope we're going to do something about it.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say that I didn't want to give the impression that was every case, and there are certainly some really good examples of where that's been anticipated, and people have been asked about their needs in relation to building moves and that kind of thing. But it's inconsistent, and I think this is the point, that there isn't a robust process for capturing those. We can't monitor it, we can't report on it. And some fall through the gaps, and those are the ones that I hear about in the network, and it's difficult to resolve those. So no, thank you for your comment.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Timmins up next, please.
Thank you, Chair, and big thank you to all the officers and all the staff networks that have come along today. Last year, this was probably the most insightful meeting that we had, and it's proving so again this year. First couple of things are just comments. I also had a letter from a resident similar to the one that Councillor Stevenson mentioned, and I do understand why residents would feel that way, particularly given how it was reported. And the feedback that I gave to my resident was that, you know, the conversation wasn't council policy, but what it did highlight is actually, as a good employer, we have these services to support our employees there all the time. I do think there is a piece on this around awareness and making sure that all our employees are aware that they have access to support when they need it. And it's important to mention that different things would, say, trigger an employee to needing that support. So that's the one on that. I was also really positive about the forward to the report from the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council. It's important to see that our commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion isn't just an here and now thing, it is a long-term strategy. And in the face of increasingly negative commentators outside of our organisation shouting down EDI, I think that was really bold for us to say this is our commitment to it moving forward, and I was really pleased about that. Coming on to where I do have questions. So listening to the staff network chair today was, like I said, really insightful. The report mentions the concerns of staff networks are twofold. Does the workforce reflect the Leeds population? We've heard from today that it does, but it doesn't at the senior level. And obviously there's work to do in terms of not giving things away but breaking down barriers to opportunity on that. And do underrepresented groups have real influence, including early involvement in policy development? But I just want to concentrate on that real influence bit, because the feedback that I've heard today is from the Race Equality Network and the LGBTQ plus network, is that actually they've come back saying the same things year in, year out. So it's clear that they're being listened to, particularly the 6-week meetings, but it's how do we make this happen within the organisation and across the many, many managers throughout the organisation. So how can we improve that? What can we do better? I think we really need to have a look at that. And just touching on the reasonable adjustments, if we can take a real good look at that as well, please, because, you know, this is the breaking down the barriers. Okay, we sometimes need to make them adjustments, and I'd like to know from senior leadership what we can do better to maybe streamline that, or make sure we've got an escalation should adjustments not be dealt with in a timely manner.
Thank you. And just to say, I guess on one of your points, the staff networks put a lot of effort into creating these asks, and that I think is a very good starting point for how we embed a lot of this stuff in the institution. But Mariana, can you come back on that, please?
Yeah, sure. As we said, we'll definitely take the point on reasonable adjustments and process and monitoring, and give some sort of report back. On the wider point, my perspective is that actually staff network chairs, and they'll tell me if I'm wrong, but we spend a lot of time on policy development with colleagues. We're forever drawing people in to say, well, we're thinking of doing this, and John and Paul particularly, use staff network colleagues a lot to inform the policy end of things and how should we do things, very much in the same way as we do with our trade union colleagues, and indeed, Vanessa is often involved in those things as well. So we try and get the policy so it is well informed from an inclusion perspective. Likewise, when we're doing Be Your Best training, we'll involve colleagues in, to help with that, or, colleagues might have helped with delivery on certain things. I think our challenge is more at implementation to get the consistency across that has been described in terms of lived experience. That doesn't happen. And that's, the job of Ed and myself and CLT colleagues and wider, senior colleagues, to just increasingly, it sounds awful, but nag managers to kind of make sure that inclusion and inclusive workplace, anti-discrimination, representation is at the forefront of managers' minds. And all we can do is just, commit to keep doing that as best we can through the accountability methods that John mentioned in terms of our EDI boards. But we are a big organisation to change, and, we've probably got a lot of improvements, but not yet enough. So I think, absolute commitment to keep on that journey.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mariana. But I think the feedback from one of the groups was that there'd been no real substantive action, and that was the feeling of the network. So I get that we're doing lots of great things, but what I would like is for that to be specifically addressed, I suppose.
We'll just keep checking and challenge the impact. I think that might have been from Carol, understandably, because the stats haven't changed. But, as Carol said, we have been doing more on diverse panels and reaching out through job shops and things like that. So we are doing some things, but they're not yet reaching everything or having the effect that we want them to have. So, as I say, we'll keep on, working with colleagues and being as innovative and as we can.
I wanted to highlight that we also raised this as well as the Racial Equality Network. I think there has been a very real sense, specifically amongst the trans staff within our network, that in some ways things have moved backwards. I know several colleagues who have stopped being out at work because they no longer feel safe. I recognise a significant part of this is the wider political situation, in particular in the last year, with the coverage of the Supreme Court ruling around trans access to gendered spaces. I think we recognise that this is certainly not entirely this is the council mismanaging the situation, but there has definitely been frustration from members of our network feeling there could have been more done to offer support or to reassure staff about their rights. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thank you. That's really useful. I've got Councillor Parnham and then Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you for everybody who came and spoke straight, honest. That's what we need as councillors. So thank you so much, Chair. Speaking at this end of the questioning, I feel like a lot of people have sort of asked the questions I wanted to ask. But I am shocked that staff aren't feeling safe at work. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, but I am shocked, especially if that's coming from other staff members. I think we need to make sure that that doesn't continue. Carol, I'm going to ask you a question, and Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Timmins kind of touched on this, but I wanted it to be heard from you because I think you've got a lot to say, and I want to hear from you, right? Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're there at the front. You're there at the front, aren't you? So we need to achieve a much higher ethnically diverse senior management, don't we, as a council? So what would you and your frontline colleagues suggest to us what needs to be done, right? That's my first bit. And then second to the senior management team, but I thought about Ed, but I don't know about Ed, maybe Mariana. Are there any other lessons we can learn from other councils, other countries about how to achieve this parity rather, in a quicker term? So, Carol, could you just give me your views first, please?
Thank you, Councillor Parnham. I don't know why you think I've got a lot to say. But anyway, I feel that a diverse workforce is a good workforce. We represent Leeds better. I think a lot of the things that all the networks have shared today would be decreased if we had more representation at senior levels. So what I would do is try to get that message across about the importance of having diverse leadership, compassionate leadership, inclusive leadership, not that it's left to a few people, but that everyone participates in that. So I think that we need to recruit more on values. I think we need to widen the pool of where we recruit from, because I think we've got a way of doing things in the council. And I don't think that it was ever anyone's intention to be unfair or to marginalise people. But by the same token, I feel that if we're going to reverse that, we have to be intentional in being as diverse and as inclusive as possible. And I think that actually includes visibility. I think people want to see visible diversity as well. I know there's an idea about having diversity of thought and being inclusive of everyone, because we've got so many protected characters. We can do that, but I think that people also need to see it. So I think that diverse recruitment is one place where we could start. And then understanding about underrepresentation. We all sort of like operate in an EDI space, so we have an idea what we mean when we talk about underrepresentation. But your average manager, no disrespect to them, but it's not their day-to-day business. They've got a vacancy in their team and their team's under pressure. They want to fill that vacancy as soon as possible. But I would like us to consider inclusive recruitment. It might take a little bit longer, but I think that the benefits outweigh the time that it's going to take. So I think that's a place where we can start. Also with training as well, and just having open and honest conversations. We try to do that in the network. We don't just have network meetings, we meet with our allies, and we also have events where we invite all staff so that we can sort of like share the message, not in a telling off way or in a preachy way. We want to help people to understand and be inclusive. Thank you.
It's a good question on how we might learn from others. I mean, I worked in Wellcome Trust for a bit, whereas I was exec sponsor for diversity inclusion there and had a bit of experience in different central government departments. I know others in the council bring other perspectives from other organisations. It is something that we talk about with our local authority counterparts. There are no magic answers that suddenly shift representation overnight, and that's, you know, many organisations have looked and tried. And as Carol has said, and many others around the table have said, it's persistence and dedication to trying things that you hope will work, and if they do work, do more of them. If they don't work, try something else, and keep going. The sorts of things that do come up in lots of organisations, sponsorship and mentorship, support for people to progress. Aspiring Leaders is an excellent scheme and is cohort number 2, more cohorts to come. It's not the only way that we can support people to progress in the organisation. Culture is such a big part of it. The day-to-day experience of our staff matters. I want them to stay. I want people to stay and thrive and grow in the organisation. And if we don't have and Quemby and Kat, you sort of talked about this, if you don't have an inclusive culture, people feel less comfortable telling us who they are, telling each other who they are at work. And that does matter. It does matter a lot. So in terms of representation, progression is a really good route to improve representation. Routes into the council matter as part of that, and I'm really proud about what we do on apprenticeships. Was with Leeds Building Services a couple of weeks ago, and frankly the proportion of apprentices they are getting into the council does really matter and changes the workforce year on year. So those sorts of measures also really matter. Diverse panels and consistency of diverse panels. Carol, you've been a huge advocate of this, and I support you in that. Making sure that we have panels that draw together the breadth of experience around the council helps us to make better decisions at the end of it. So we do need to keep improving the consistency with that, and then getting the message out to others, exactly as you've said, that Carol and others have, that we want this place to be an amazing place to work for anyone from any background, to bring the best of their abilities to the council and to do their life's best work here. And we want that to be a fact and a truth in the experience people have. So it's up to us to tell a story and to get that story out when we advertise jobs. But actually, it's part of what every employee will do. If we are that inclusive culture, if we are offering that opportunity, they'll take that message out and they'll bring other people to work in the council and to apply for jobs here. So it comes from the culture we're trying to build here. And it is, yes, there are measures that we must try. Yes, there are things we must be more consistent on, but it's also how we create that day-to-day culture.
Thank you. Councillor Parnham, do you have a follow-up question?
I just want to say thank you so much to Carol and to Ed. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Hamilton down.
Mine's just a quick question that I should have mentioned before we started. I didn't mention it in our pre-meet. I noticed that the Speak Up Guardian, there were no report from the Speak Up Guardian, and her attendance isn't here. So my question is to why? Because I believe they normally come every year.
Yeah, so Mariana, yeah, no, you're welcome.
Yeah, Vanessa has normally been a part, and her feedback has normally been encouraged. But what I think after our conversation last year at Scrutiny, it was felt that probably that was more appropriate for corporate governance and audit linked to whistleblowing. So we've kind of taken that route for Vanessa's feedback. It's still absolutely mission critical to us. You know, I meet Vanessa, Caroline works closely with Vanessa, and Ed does, and she comes regularly to CLT. So we can certainly bring that to Scrutiny as well. But it was felt that corporate governance and audit was a more appropriate route.
Did you have a follow-up question? Yes, Councillor Flynn wants to come in, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I can't agree more with Councillor Hamilton. Very surprised that the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian isn't here. I understand, you know, where the responsibilities lie in terms of which meeting they go to, but this is a scrutiny board. And the issue at hand here on EDI is probably one of the most important things that we should be dealing with. And the person that most staff might think about going to would be the Guardian if they thought they had a particular problem that was very sensitive and they couldn't take up with their line management, or wouldn't take up with their line manager. So I don't know if I'm going to be on this board next year, but I, for one, certainly want the Guardian to be here. Just as an aside, on the subject, you know, more widely, the organisation will always, I think, emphasise the things that are going well, and they have done. I think they talk about the tangible progress this year, but the recurring theme from the various networks and the reports were about concerns expressed about progression, communications, and influence. And the one that concerns me most is communications. So whatever the issues are around progression and influence, there is no excuse for poor communications between management and the various staff networks or staff as a whole, actually. So it's more of a comment, I think, Chair, than anything else. But I just want to make it a formal sort of request. The Guardian is here next year. I'm not sure if you know or not, but the National Guardian's office is closing down this year, which I think is a retrograde step. Let's not let the same thing happen here.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, we did discuss this in the pre-meeting as well, and we can formally note that as part of this meeting as well from you. So thank you for that. I do just want to touch on one last thing, which has been a kind of recurring theme, which is really about frontline staff and non-city centre staff. That came up in our work on the staff surveys. And one of our recommendations as a board following our working group was that we look at whether there are more nimble and accessible ways to survey those staff. But I would just be really interested to hear from any of the chairs whether you have views on how, because one or two of you mentioned this, on how we could facilitate those staff having more chance to engage with the work you do. It's okay if you don't, but I'd just be interested if you do have a view on that. I can see Kat.
I think it's important to not reinvent the wheel. I actually really want to highlight the work that there is. There's some really amazing work done in our sort of CH&E department, CEL. There is a particular leader called Liz in there who has done exceptional work, who has sort of been honestly the backbone, I think, of that service in terms of being proactive, being engaged, always being at the sort of forethought of what might be important to staff. For example, we have a session tomorrow and she said, well, can you record the online session so we can then replay that at a way that we might get that out to the frontline staff. So Liz is the type of leader that we want to see, I think, in the organisation, because when we've got people who think about this, because her priority is the staff and the staff development first and foremost, and how that fits around the complexities of shifting and navigating, like every day the work changes. So I think that in some ways it's almost learning from the people who are doing the good work now and then rolling it out wider to demonstrate like what can be done. It's just understanding the roots into that from my perspective.
Thank you. And actually that mirrors what we found in thinking about the survey as well, that, there were particular teams that were doing a fantastic job of reaching people who, so what you're suggesting mirrors that. Did you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, just to add to that, I know we're probably sounding a bit of a broken record on this, but staff capacity and the amount of work which is placed on staff, the amount of teams which are running under capacity, just means, especially with frontline staff, I work in data analysis, so a lot of my work is very flexible. I have a lot of control over my schedule. But colleagues who work in sort of frontline service delivery, just like, well, my service centre's short-staffed today, so there's no way I can get away. I'm lucky if I can get a lunch break today, to be honest. So I think it does come back to capacity, which is part of a wider conversation, I'm aware.
Thank you. Yeah, David. Yeah.
Forgive me, just very quickly, just to pick up on Councillor Parnham's question about how we learn from others, and the frontline staff piece made me think of Northern Gas Networks. So we're trialling and running a network of LGBTQ plus networks across the city, and we're using that opportunity to learn how other networks are dealing with the same problem in different organisations. And Northern Gas Networks particularly sprang to my mind, because how do you get to the people who are digging up the road and therefore aren't sat in front of a computer? So we're using those opportunities to create networks of networks, which the council is leading, which is demonstrating good practice and learning good practice from others, and we're looking to try and expand that with other networks too. So we will bring back that learning from across the city, as well as helping to create those networks of networks, which will help Leeds to be a better place to be.
Thank you. And that's very useful and interesting. And one of the interests of this board has been in different ways about the experience of frontline staff. So next year's chair can think about that, I think, and think about how they bring in people from other organisations as well to talk through what they're doing. That's really useful. I'm going to bring this item to a close. Councillor Cooper, did you want to add anything there?
Yes, please, Chair, and just briefly, because I'm aware everybody's, time limit on this scrutiny board as well. But I really did want to thank the network chairs for coming and sharing so openly and frankly with elected members about the experience that some of your members in your networks have brought to you. I also recognise you all value the opportunity that you have as networks to be able to tell that story and to tell that story here as well, not just in your regular meetings with senior leadership and Ed, but also to elected members as well. I think it's really important that you continue to do that. And I also get that you've got a day job to do as well. So, this is outside of what you're already doing in your main role, as an employee of the council as well. So a massive heartfelt thanks to all of you for all of that work that you do. It's really important that you keep doing that. You keep raising those issues because they really matter. They matter to the people who come and work for us. So whether that, whatever protected characteristic that might well be, every single person that works for Leeds City Council deserves to be valued in their work, deserves to be able to come to work and be the person they need to be in that work environment and that workspace. And I know that we've done a lot as a council. I remember sitting here the first meeting 4 years ago with you as some of new chairs we've got, and I'm really pleased to see that as well and the progression that you've made as networks. But to hearing from the first meeting about some of the gaps and challenges that we undoubtedly have as a council, I do believe that we have made some progression in terms of the way that we've dealt with that. But there's still so much for us to do. And, I'm the first person to admit there is a lot for us to do as a council to ensure that everybody feels that value when they walk through the door of a morning, whether it be virtual or a physical door. It's really important for us to continue with that work. Please rest assured that it's got that political commitment as well as the senior leadership here with Ed and Mariana and so on, but actually from the leader and the executive board here are fully behind, this organisation being the best it can be in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion. And we won't stop until we make sure that we do achieve that. It's a real, commitment, not just an ambition, but we do want to see ourselves get there. I recognise that the world outside of here today has had an impact on some of that as well, whether that be nationally or internationally, politically with a small p or a big P. There is so much that impacts our staff on a day-to-day basis, and we need to be adept at responding to that as an organisation to ensure everybody feels safe in their work as well. But I just wanted to make that really clear, and thank you so much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. So just before we bring this item to a close, obviously I echo Councillor Cooper's thanks very strongly. Thank you also, John and Paul, for your time today and the work that you've done on this. Lots and lots of work behind the scenes. Are members happy with the recommendations in the report, first of all? And would members be happy with an additional recommendation along the lines of asking for a look at the feasibility and feedback on all of the specific asks that have been raised by the network chairs? Looks like that's a yes. So thank you, and I hope that next year's chair can come back and speak to you at another one of your chairs network chairs meetings to run through that with you, so we can keep that feedback loop going. So we do have we do technically have 2 more items, probably quite quick ones. Those from the staff networks, please don't feel bad about leaving and having some lunch, but you're welcome to stay as well if you would like to. Moving on to item number 10, which is actually the end of year statement. I'll just very quickly draw out a couple of points, but hopefully everyone's read it already. As chair, just to say, you know, we mentioned in there about the organisational effectiveness theme. I think that should be pretty much the priority for the board next year, given that we're changing how we work as a council and do finance, do that work. Procurement will be back as well, I think. I just wanted to pull out as well the working group and the staff survey. I think those recommendations from that are some of the kind of more important work that we've done this year. And I think related to that, we also have the Be Well at Work, and I think clearly attendance is going to be a big part of the work programme next year. I actually think, for me though, today's meeting was probably the highlight, the staff networks. And I think what it shows is the importance of bringing frontline voices into scrutiny, and not just hearing from the people who run each service, but actually the people that make it up and the partners and stakeholders. So I think that is something that next year's chair should really, really think about. And finally, just a couple of thank yous. I won't embarrass Councillor Cooper again by thanking her again, but hopefully that's noted. But I would like to say also Councillor Asghar Khan was the chair when you started this year, and I inherited a lot of his mantle. So we must say thanks to Councillor Khan. And I will definitely embarrass Rob, Scrutiny Advisor. Just to let you know how the sausage is made, Rob did the first draft of this statement, and I forced him to write. I wrote my own thanks to Rob and forced him to put that in there because he was too humble to thank himself. But he does an immense amount of work. I've been really surprised by how much work happens behind the scenes, and I think the most important stuff that Scrutiny does in a way is between the meetings, and you know it's Rob that does a lot of that work. So thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it, and thanks for getting me up to speed partway through the year as well. That was yeah. Well, anyway, it's being enjoyable for me to work with you. I hope the same goes the other way. Does anyone have any questions on the end of year statement at all? Councillor Timmins, of course.
Very briefly, it's a good summary, to be fair, but just in light of some of our conversations today, I was hoping that maybe you could highlight and add some to reflect that into the report.
Yeah, I think that's a very sensible suggestion. Anybody else got any questions or suggestions? No. Okay. Well, so the last item is work programme. Are members happy with the work programme such as it is next year? Okay. Will members accept the recommendations there? Yeah. And date and time of the next meeting, 8th of June, 10:15 AM for the pre-meet, 10:30 for the start. Thank you.